Welcome to the Main Character Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Hamblin, main character of my own story. But this podcast isn't about me. It's about you, and all of you. Every person that has ever lived on this planet, all 8 billion people here now, all that came before us, and all that will come hereafter are the main characters in their own story. My aim is to interview people that embody living in their energy and discovering from their perspective what their perception of reality is like. Buckle up. You're about to experience the world through another main character's eyes. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those guys that I do a ton of, you guys got a $700 espresso machine, right? You don't do it half-assed, right?
Yeah. If we're gonna, it's like, because if we're gonna make it, for some stuff, I'm cheap. Like everybody has things
Right.
that they're like, oh, I don't care too much about this. I'll be cheap on this, but I want stuff you like. Like I want a really nice setup because this is like a creative outlet I have. This is my hobby, more or less. This is a side project I'm doing. I really want to invest in it, so I get the value of that. And when I'm going on off into sales stuff, but yeah, when you see the value in something that it's going to provide you, of course everyone has a budget still, but the dollar amount becomes something that's reasonable.
Yes.
Something that you're willing to consider a higher one for because you understand the value of that it's going to bring you.
So what are some examples of that in your life?
Well, I think for me personally, and I know this is, I know a lot of people have different opinions on this, but cars, I don't like buying used cars.
Oh, okay.
And I understand you can save a lot of money doing that on the front end. Just my personal anecdotal experience, everyone I know who's not a mechanic.
There's the qualifier. Yeah, which is a pretty big one.
Everyone I know who doesn't have an extensive history and willingness to work on their own car, who's bought a used car, has had terrible experiences with it. So,
well, I take it you've had a terrible experience.
No, actually,
I've
seen so many
that you were like, nope, forget it. I'm not even going to go down that road. No.
And with the only exception, I didn't buy a used car, but when my grandfather passed, he bought a used car, and he was a mechanic his whole life. So when he buys it, he's able to discern for himself. He actually has the fundamental working knowledge and the technical understanding to know whether this car has problems or not.
Totally.
And then he also has, for him, working on cars was his profession and also a hobby. So if something went wrong, he's like, oh, now I have something to do this weekend instead of watching the same Western shows I've watched for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
That's not my relationship with working on cars.
No.
So if you're that person, that makes sense to me. I understand why and how you can save a ton of money that way. For me, the cars is the utility, and I hate working in cars. I can do some. I can change oil.
I was going to say change your oil.
I can change a tire.
Yep.
All right. I can the whole wheel. Not literally the tire. People don't.
Yeah. No.
Remember, I have a tiny bit of understanding of car. I've done brakes before. I can do oil. I don't, just because I don't.
No,
I don't.
The time
for me,
the time cost alone.
I'll
just spend it to have some tech do it.
Yeah, and I'm renting in an apartment. I don't want to be in the parking lot changing my oil or finding a random street to go change my. For me, it's just easier to pay
$70-$80.
Yeah, pay someone else to do it. Anyways,
so
sorry, we're back on espresso machines.
So buying things because you know their value and this is your thing. So with the car situation, so you buy new cars.
So we've only purchased new cars in our lives because, of course, a new car can have problems, and I've seen new cars have problems.
Oh yeah.
My dad's experiences have gotten me to not buy American cars. My dad buys American cars exclusively and brand new.
Yep.
Every time has like major issues with it immediately after purchase.
Yes.
And so I have a German car, my wife has a Japanese car.
Yep.
And we've only bought new, and so for
knock on wood, so far no problems.
Yes, knock on wood. Those generous wood spirits. And that's where that custom comes from. Ancient times, they'd be like calling the spirits out of the tree. You knock on the tree. And
is that what that is?
Calling the spirits. That's what historians have written down. History's a narrative.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, right? We were way more connected to nature in the past. Yeah. So, wood spirits. Okay.
Anyways.
And this is a plastic table, so I guess it actually...
That's kind of why I was looking.
Yeah, what do we have underneath here? There it is. Yeah, on some... I think that's oak, maybe.
Anyway.
Yeah, the oak spirits.
Looks like wood.
It is a good wood.
It's got a lot of... there's a lot of traditions around oak specifically.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you do woodworking?
No. I just read way too much stuff. So I'm kind of into... I've read a lot of stuff about pre-Christian traditions. Yeah. Once I stopped being a Christian, I was just interested in other stuff. And so I've just read a lot. I'm not like a practicing pagan or anything like that, but I've just read a lot and I'm very interested in it.
Okay. So this is getting into what makes Lucas, right? So, oh man, do we put a button on the religious piece and finish up with? Let's do that. Let's come back to that because that's going to take us to places.
Right.
So I want to add to the buying nice things, so you don't have to. So my thing is, I was just telling somebody the story. My first car was an '87 Pathfinder, $500, and within a couple months the radiator blew. It was more expensive to replace that than whatever. Right. So then, and my dad owned a car dealership, so I just drove whatever was off the lot for a little bit. And then I got my dad bought me as a 16-year-old a brand new car.
Nice.
Now, granted, it was a Kia Spectra, and this is like 2003 to 2004, so they weren't nice yet.
Sure.
And I totaled it within 6 months. So there's that. What do you give a 16-year-old? I'm not giving a 16-year-old a new car, but a beater that's going to blow up in a couple months. So there's a like in between space.
That makes sense.
But then shoes is a good example, right? We both have to dress professionally for our jobs, and you can go to DSW or wherever and get a $70-$80 pair of shoes. Those suckers are going to wear out in a year, maybe two, and you can polish them and then they start to crack and they're just garbage. And so I buy like $300-$400 pairs of nice, good quality leather, nice shoes because those suckers are going to last me at least a decade plus, as long as I take care of them. I'm a drummer. I've had $500,000 drum sets, and those things do not last because you are literally beating them. And so speaking of wood, this drum set that I have now is $4,000 kit, made out of babinga.
Babinga.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Oh my God. I think it's an African wood, really dense. And so everything's vibration. When you're pounding away on these things, it's got this like deep, warm, amazing tone to it. In fact, I got I think I'm on my fourth or fifth wedding ring, and it's babinga. The guy goes, yeah, I make it, here's maple, here's this, here's that. Oh, and I have these babinga ones. Do you know what babinga is? And I go, yes, in fact, I do. I will take it. Or buying the nice espresso machine because like I do as well. I spend a lot of money on coffee and it's cheaper to have the good thing at home.
Particularly with coffee machines, we had before my wife worked at Starbucks and we got into espresso. We had a number of cheap Walmart drip coffee machines and they were just cheap junk. And so they broke and I'm a clumsy brute. And
I don't know if that's how I would have described you. But if you're going to self-describe that way,
yeah. As much as I love my wife, Hannah is not a ballerina either. Speaking of that, Hannah broke a is a cheap junk door in a cheap rental place.
Yeah.
But there's one morning it was like stuck on something. They get out of their track because they're cheap junk. They're not.
Yeah.
And so
cheap aluminum frame.
She just kicks the dang thing.
Oh, no.
And breaks it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I had to go to work. I just didn't even react to that. That was just like, like if I had done that growing up, like my parents would have been like so pissed if I just like broke a door out of like essentially. And she was like, "Wow, that was really dumb." Later, of course, but
Of course.
out of
But
like
in the moment.
out of like raw emotional volatility and like kind of stupidity a little bit,
Yeah.
just breaking something in the house, that would have been a really, really big deal. So it was just
growing up, wouldn't have been the best for you.
no, I was like, and we didn't even get charged for it when we moved out. I lied for my personal self benefit, and I said, "Oh, it was like that."
They're gonna watch this and come back and be like, "You owe us $250 for a sliding door."
I told him that it was broken when we showed up, and I was it was two women, and I kind of had to intimidate them a little bit.
Yeah.
And like I wasn't up in their face, but I made sure the whole time, like, do those subtle things, like talk louder, be big, stand closer than I knew they were comfortable with me standing to them, and just made it seem like they weren't, like I wasn't being polite to them. I was being like, kind of like, this is not worth my time. I've got things to do, places to see. Like, let's go, gals. Like, I got to get out. You know, that type of thing just puts a lot of people it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, so they want to get out of the situation too. Well, and we'll put a button on this too, because I think it'll tie into the spirituality piece. One of the things I've been navigating a lot lately, because I'm like you, I'm post-Christian, and then it becomes you're raised that way, you learn your morality through Christianity, and then when you're out of it, you go, okay, well, the world operates primarily off of religious morality, whatever the religion is, which interestingly enough has led to the majority of wars throughout world history. But if that's not what I'm going to base my morality on, is it based off of something like power? Is it based off of something like compassion? Is it how do we as humans get to our morality point? But knowing in a situation how to manipulate it to your favor, I mean, is that at its base power? I think so. But is that good? Is that bad? I don't know.
It was good for me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yes.
Self-interest. This is a world. I think this is probably going to be the most interesting topic that we have. We can talk about a lot of stuff, but this is deep. This is something that doesn't get spoken about often by two people who have a similar understanding of being and that experience of being post-Christian, but also you're a good person. You're a good guy. You have a lovely family.
Thank you.
You're not.
I like to think
you're not a bad person, and neither am I.
Right back at you. Yes.
So there's a lot of factors involved to that, and one of the things that I'm not like I told you earlier, I've read a lot of stuff about pre-Christian traditions, but I'm not like practicing or anything like that.
Right.
I've read a lot about a lot of different stuff, Eastern stuff, some Taoism, teeny bit of Buddhism. I don't really have a deep understanding of it, but I've dabbled in just researching it. Islam as well. As far as I'm concerned, I consider myself looking from the outside in. It's Christianity, it's like the expansion pack or whatever.
The expansion pack.
It's Abrahamism, the trilogy. You know, you've got the Torah, the New Testament, and then the
Quran.
The Quran and the Hadiths and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so
that is so well said.
Because it's an
Abrahamic tradition, and they've got Jesus in there. He's just a prophet, and now we have Muhammad.
He's number 2.
Right.
Jesus is number 2 for Muslims.
Yeah.
So,
and how dare they? We're going to go to war with them. You don't have him number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you had something to add on there.
No, please. I'm just,
One thing that I have come to understand is that if I had more power, if I was, say, as rich as Elon Musk, I would be doing things like Elon Musk. I would be using my money on projects that I just want to do. Him, his rockets and whatever, Hyperloop that's never materialized and whatever. And I'm certainly not, I don't think he's necessarily some amazing person, particularly now that he's become more controversial because he's dabbling in politics.
Yes.
That's definitely something I would be doing if I was a billionaire,
Of course,
or the richest man in the world. I would be buying politicians and influencing society to influence it in ways that I want to. I would be asserting that power. I have no desire to hurt people, but I definitely have my interests. And if I had the power, I'm willing to assert myself on the world. One thing I realized to be successful in life, particularly as a man, is that you have to be willing to make others uncomfortable. You have to be willing to assert yourself on the world and sometimes on others and make others uncomfortable. Or sometimes they don't get to have their lunch. If you want your lunch, they don't get to have theirs, and you have to be okay with that. Otherwise, that's going to eat you up. Especially, I work a super easy security job now, so I sit on my butt most of the day. But from coming from sales and the military, like, you have to, if you willingly join the military, and it's not just like, oh, I have no future, so I'm just going to join the military. Like, I was not that. I was like the person who normally doesn't join the military. My dad was an engineer, got a good education growing up, but I didn't want to go to college. And I was like, I'm hopped up on, I was in 4th grade on 9/11 on the East Coast, and I was hopped up on war propaganda growing up.
Oh, and it was heavy.
And I was like, let me go, like you're saying, let me go. We brought up the Islam thing. Let me go. Let me go kill some. That was the mindset, and that was the propaganda that I, as a young man, was being fed, and I fell victim to it. And so, anyways, I waited 8 months for an infantry contract in the Marine Corps because I wanted to go. I never went to combat, but I wanted to at the time.
Yeah.
Now I definitely wouldn't want to, particularly with. It's interesting because on the war subject, it's really easy to send men to war when you, and the United States does and did, particularly against Iraq, have such an overwhelming advantage technologically, military, in every capacity. It's really easy. And then when you think about how that war was actually conducted, their actual standing army was defeated in like a month. And then it was mostly just fighting insurgents, and the most they had was, IEDs and small arms, mostly.
Right.
Mostly. And so you're not worried about, oh, well, what if the enemy has mechanized artillery and I just get obliterated out of nowhere one day. There was more, you had more personal impact on the combat because the enemy had such little means.
Yes.
But like Ukraine, Russia right now, both sides are basically at parity. Both sides have constant surveillance of each other.
Right.
You can't do anything without being seen. Both sides have ballistic missiles, have drones, have tanks, mechanized artillery, mines, remote mines, everything. And it's just, there's no, like, the human, and this happens every time there's a new development in warfare.
Yeah.
People from having experience or being accustomed to one type of warfare, where it's like, in the Marine Corps, mostly we're like, oh, we're going to go patrol and they're insurgents, so they're not a uniformed military. We can't identify them. We're going to literally make ourselves targets. We're going to do a contact patrol to make contact with the enemy. We're going to literally walk through the middle of literally walk through the middle of the street, wait for them to shoot at us. Oh, that's the bad guy. We can, because now
there they are.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but we're all like, yeah, we're hopped up on war propaganda and the culture. The Marine Corps does a really good job of indoctrinating and making, psychologically creating warriors. And so, when we're going back to morality, trying to tie this back in and not just go off on tangents.
Oh, this is perfect because there's so many little rabbit holes on each one of these that I want to touch on.
Yeah, I had to accept, at that time I was still deeply Catholic.
Oh,
at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself as a teenager and a very young man, like, oh, Christianity says, oh, like, don't kill and all this stuff, like, don't covet and stuff like that. But I was like, if our and I understood myself and the United States as a civilization, as an empire,
Yeah.
and I was like, if we have the means to do it, we should go take their oil
Yeah.
because they have a resource that we find desirable.
Yes.
And that would make our lives, at least theoretically, it could make gas cheaper. And
Right.
if that alone, when you're thinking with that level of understanding, you're not talking about like politics, morality. You're just like, we're a civilization. I'm in the military. My profession is to go fight. You want to do that.
Why wouldn't you go do that?
Right. And that's something that you don't like shy away from that. And that's why a lot of times people in the military, particularly, pump the mic, have a hard time adjusting back to civilian world, because if you can't talk to normal people and be like, man, I want to kill those guys over there. They're like, dude, like,
whoa.
like they're also people. And that's
Yeah.
why like looking from the outside and not being in the military, I don't have my personal identity tied up with the US government or
Yeah.
Our foreign policy. It's very much opposed to those things now. When I see the fighting and the conflict that's going on, I'm just like, even though, me, I'm interested in geopolitics and, again, like
Yes.
civilizational struggles and power politics and all that stuff. It's super interesting.
Yeah.
And so I have a side that I favor in almost, or I at least can pick a side if I want to look at a conflict. And again, I do way too much reading. So like,
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, by extension, you have to be a fan of history.
of course, yeah.
Right.
And so
And it loves to repeat itself.
I still, even the side that I think they're leaders, because the people in the trenches are always just people.
Right. They're the fodder. Yep.
And the motivations of the leadership class,
Yes.
even if I think their goals, I don't align with their goals, or I think their goals are bad or whatever. And I understand it's almost always beyond morality. It's always like the interests of this nation align. And so then they create in English, propaganda has a very almost always exclusively negative connotation. In other languages, it doesn't.
Right.
And so in that, I'm using propaganda in that context. It is simply the message. That's kind of what I'm using it as.
Yes.
And our country, just like every country, every civilization when the leadership class comes up with a goal, they will create propaganda to motivate, because war never benefits the little guy, the people doing the frontline combat. And that's why they've had to create like incentives. And back in the old Roman times, like, oh, we'll give you 25 years, you get your pension, you get your land. Same as today, you do your 20 years, you get your pension. Here's all your benefits, because you might die, you might lose your life, and we're also going to ask you to kill people and get psychologically all these potential hazards for you. Most people, you're just like, it's like, why would I go do that? And particularly when like pre-politics, when people were just peasants and didn't have information, weren't literate,
didn't have the freedoms that we have.
Right. When your whole life and like consciousness is like your little village of like 200 people.
Yeah.
And then the king comes around like, well, we're all gonna go to war. It's like, okay, why?
Right.
You gotta motivate them. Oh, they're the wrong religion. They're whatever. They attacked, shamed our kingdom or whatever.
I think the most fundamental motivation is they're going to come kill you. They're going to disrupt your way of life. They're going to do something to you.
They're a threat to your existence.
Yes, exactly. If we don't stop them now.
Yes.
Right? Because if the lead was, hey, we're going to go get oil. Right? No, the lead was, they attacked us. They hate our way of life. They're going to continue to do it. There's probably terrorists amongst you now. And so we need to go take care of this now. Oh, and by the way, there's weapons of mass destruction. They could wipe out our entire civilization.
That Iraq didn't have. So, back to morality, I guess.
Yes. Okay. So there's a couple things that popped into my head. Sayings that we've heard 1.5 million times. Things like might makes right, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Book. I don't know if I've read it.
It's a short book.
Who's it by? Do you know?
I think it's something Thorson. I don't know.
Okay.
I forget the author, but you get the gist just from the title.
Well, just from the title, right? And every history class I've ever taken, that's one of the topics of conversation is might makes right. Well, and I was in, what was I? I was in high school. I was freshman, sophomore, one of those two, when 9/11 happened. And so you were fourth grade. So I was a lot closer to my buddies almost immediately, right? Because I'm friends with seniors. I'm friends with people
Guys
that
who are
had just
gonna
graduated.
sign up to the
So
military.
they instantly sign up and go. In fact, my family ended up, we would, invite people into our home that had broken homes or whatever it was. And so we had this guy come live with us. And then as he was finishing up high school, and then he ended up going off to Iraq, his convoy got hit by an IED, and he lost everybody in his, maybe there was one other survivor, but that's the sort of stuff, right? The post, the PTSD, how do you deal with that? And then recognizing, what the heck am I here for? Was this actually worth it? And I remember when all that was happening, and I'm thinking, we are the strongest, most powerful nation that's ever existed. Why aren't we going around this world and just making everybody do what we want?
It's kind of, in some ways, it's kind of what we are doing.
Oh, right.
So here's the problem with the American empire, and I don't use that necessarily negatively.
Right.
I have, just as like a disclaimer, me personally, my interest and the interest of the American ruling class are essentially diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
But I'm also able to just have a conversation about it and not be
Yes.
like emotionally crazy.
Yeah.
So the problem that the American empire has is that we have the state ideology, the state religion, the propaganda that the state uses, is we use these ideals of freedom, democracy.
We're going to spread democracy to the world.
Liberty, but then our actions don't align well with the propaganda.
At all.
Right. And so, at least with in Christian times, you could be, it was okay, if you wanted to, you could be find a quote from the Bible, Jesus said he comes with a sword, and we're
right.
gonna, or whatever. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know there's quotes where, or go back to a story where, that's our land.
Right.
We're good Christians. We're the people of God, and God from the Old Testament gave his people this land and said, go slaughter the Canaanites. It's your holy mission to slaughter those Canaanites.
Yeah.
Well, we're the chosen people of God. Obviously, our civilizations are the people of God, and those are those evil whoever's, and so it was easy to, it was more congruent. It was more consistent. And so
right, because you had state, you had no separation of church and state. They were together.
Right. And so then you have this problem where you have decades of the educated class in this country being aligned more with the state ideology.
Yeah.
But then the people who actually hold power in our country are people like who President Eisenhower warned us about.
Right.
The military-industrial complex.
Yes.
And others, our industry, like I said, the national interests of the country. It's beyond morality. And then we create, and this isn't just our country, this is every country.
Right.
And
that kind of ties into your point with Elon Musk.
Right.
Where our version of might makes right is, the might in this case would be monetary. One of my big arguments for a while has been, we need a really clear separation of corporation and state, because that is the military industrial complex, right? That's Raytheon, that's Boeing, that's there's a couple more in there. And you can even look at things like BlackRock, that I swear owns 20% at least of just about everything.
Yep. BlackRock is the single largest holding company in the entire world.
Right.
They own an inordinate amount of money. They are more powerful than many countries,
right,
due to their wealth.
Yeah.
I support full BlackRock
expungement,
annihilation. My military brain's coming back out. We're talking about the struggle.
Yeah. How do Well, and not Adam, Robin Williams had that great joke about politicians should wear jackets like NASCAR with all of their sponsors on there, right? Who are your lobbyists that are paying for everything? Because you look at Washington, D.C., and it's the richest, the counties around there are the richest in the nation. And there's a reason. It's because it's all made up of lobbyists and politicians. And you think that your little grassroots, whatever it is, makes a difference in elections? No, they're all bought.
So funny. I can talk to that a lot because I'm from, again, I grew up middle class.
Yeah.
And my dad was in the military industrial working for like companies like General Dynamics.
Oh yeah.
And General Dynamics does a lot, but he was an electrical engineer making stuff for the military.
Yeah.
He was doing sales pitches to 3-star generals in the Pentagon to
Yes.
sell them lots of things.
Right.
I don't much.
Well, you're bringing jobs to the local economy, and if you don't do
And that
this,
helped
then
him
we're going to
by-
have to close this branch down. And
Yeah, and when you're just
bland.
when you're just an individual and you're like, oh, I just want to get a good job. I'm going to get a good education. And so it's very funny because he's very aligned with the state interests, and I don't think he's conscious of why. And I think because he's not able to explain it very well, and everyone has their own opinions, but I think it ultimately comes down to the fact that he got I don't know exactly how much money he has, and he's not like 100 millionaire or something, but he's very well off.
Yeah.
And his parents were, again, my grandfather was a completely uneducated mechanic.
Yeah.
So from where my dad grew up and his parents to what he did was like an astronomical jump.
yeah,
So his perspective is like, holy crap, I made it. He was the first one in his family to get a bachelor's degree, go to college, and he did very, very well for himself. And so basically his personal benefit in life and where he derives most of his value as a person, like, oh, I was a smart guy, I was an engineer, I developed all this stuff
yeah,
and made lots of money. And because I did all those things, I was able to have a big family and this and that. And so that's like his whole life.
of course.
And so it's just funny now that even after he's out of it, because a lot of times you'll see people who are like estranged from the system, like former generals will sometimes like openly talk against what the state is doing, even.
Right.
And then it's of course like, oh well, what bone does this person have to pick? And
Right.
a lot of times it's valid, but,
Right.
And so
Well, but I think that ties in.
I would have expected a little more honesty from him now that he's
Yeah.
not personally. Well, I guess maybe he still is because he's got tons of stock, and I know,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of it is in the company and other companies in the military industry.
Well,
complex.
and I think that's a beautiful example of the morality question. Is I think it comes down to self-interest to its core, right? And so, is he going to bite the hand that feeds? Why would he? It's self-preservation. I was just listening to a Rogan. I think it's one of the latest ones, and he has this Stephen Braylon. Anyways, he's a hunter survivalist sort of guy, and they're talking about the Donner Party. And I didn't realize this. He brings it up, but over 50% of the people in the Donner Party were children. And when they go back and they look at it, right, because everybody thinks Donner Party cannibalism, right?
I actually haven't heard this.
Oh, you don't know the Donner Party?
No.
Okay, so you're going to have to look into it because I don't know all the details, but it's somewhere in California. They got stuck up in the mountains and needed, and had to survive the winter.
I think I've heard something similar. I might have heard this story.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple, right? There's the soccer team that crashed in the Andes. They crashed somewhere.
I have heard about that one.
Yeah, that one. There's a
in the
movie
plane.
about it that's pretty awesome. And if you want to survive, at some point you will get to the point of if you can't forage, can't find food, you're going to do what it takes to survive, and that's going to be eating your buddy.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's basic human. I love how the little quick rabbit hole here. Everybody goes, oh, after a breakup, right? Oh, well, he was a narcissist. Congratulations. We all are. Yeah. At some point, and at some degree, we're all narcissists because the root of morality is self-preservation. And so the point that he was making with the Donner Party and with it being 50% children is he goes, it was fascinating because actually a lot of the children made it. And some of the people went off to try and, either get to civilization or make it. And of those people, the ones that had children were more likely to survive. The ones that stayed at camp the ones that were more likely to survive were the ones with children, right? And so you have your self-preservation, and then you have your posterity's preservation. And so if you're just some lone man, you're probably going to be one of the first ones that get eaten. And so if you extrapolate that out to a community of 200, that tribe, if you go out to, look throughout history, it always ends up becoming, yes, there's the core one person, but then if you can make that a community, if you can make that a state, if you can make that an empire, you're going to go eat the other thing for self-preservation.
Right. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
It's actually good.
Yes.
In a sense. Because why would you? It's from the biological perspective.
Yes.
Like we were saying, if life exists.
Yes.
We're conscious.
Yeah.
Life exists. And if you wanted to derive a scientific purpose of life, it's to reproduce.
Yes.
And to thrive, to prosper.
Yeah.
Gather more resources.
Yes.
And spread your genes. And that's across all organisms.
Yes.
Protozoa, bacteria, humans.
Right.
Everything in between.
Yeah.
That's what life does. So if you want to, and that's another thing that's helped me understand things in the world, and particularly when we're kind of tying back into politics and war, is that the purpose of things are what they do. Particularly when people have power, they're not stupid.
Right.
They're actually probably smarter than you and I. If they have more wealth and power than you, they often are.
Yes.
And even though we do have puppets as well who aren't, but
of course,
a lot of the people who are not the puppets, they are generally smarter. Smarter and more capable in certain capacities than normal average people, relatively average people like us.
Of course.
And so anyways, that's a really good way to look at things is don't look at what they're saying or the message, look at what are they doing.
Yes.
Consistently. What are their consistent actions? That's their purpose. That's their goal. Not ignore whatever they say.
Right.
Particularly as salespeople.
Oh gosh, what's that quote? It's something along the lines of, don't tell me what you're going to do, show me.
Right. Exactly.
And that's totally it. And to your point, we have two competing things going on within us. We have our biology. And if you look across every form of life, when do you not want the strongest of that organism to survive?
Ooh, exactly.
Don't you want the best of the best to make it? Don't you want everything in nature to be based off of meritocracy?
And I think the only people who would disagree with that are people who know their own weakness,
yes,
but are not able to be honest about it.
Of course, if I was 5'3" and I had a couple genetic mess ups and other things, I am not going to want that to be the case.
You'd be very egalitarian.
Absolutely. Thank God I'm 6'2" and all the blue eyes and Aryan and
you're a tall, beautiful human being, Brandon.
Yeah. I think you and I are both going to make it, Lucas.
I think so as well. And you've made other tall, beautiful human beings. I barely got a glimpse of your family, but good people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good stock. So
yeah. Well, and right. I mean, that's when you get, and again, not to get too just driven by the biology of it, but you and Hannah, same thing. That is, you two are going to end up having beautiful babies. But that's what why wouldn't we want that for us?
If you're the only reason is because people get psychologically manipulated against their own biological interest. And the other, we've said a lot of might makes right and kind of anti-egalitarian things, but the other thing that plays into self-interest, the two big fundamental drivers that influence human behavior is we can't do no one owns the whole planet. No one can do everything, be everywhere all the time, and eventually we all degrade and get weak and die.
Right.
So there is also a self-interested drive for cooperation.
Yes.
If you can do this thing, I can go do this thing.
Right.
So we don't have to both do the same thing, and then we can do each one thing better. The most basic, and then we can share.
Yes.
When I gather these berries really good, and you bring the water really good.
Right. Let's team up.
We get better at each one, and then we can share, we can trade.
Yes.
And so just that whole concept. And so there's an interplay and morality and ideology and politics and all of these things that we've been talking about, religion. They're trying to find a way to balance people's self-interest.
Yes.
And also cooperation, which is also fundamentally self-interest.
Yeah.
But there's that, those are the two forces that interplay with each other.
Yeah. Well, and especially on that biology side, right? I always think of when the zombie apocalypse hits or nuclear war or whatever, right? The comet hits, whatever, the poles shift, whatever the thing is. I don't want to be amongst a whole bunch of just hunters. I don't want to be amongst a bunch of just doctors. You need, who's the doctor on my team? Who's the hunter on my team?
Exactly.
You need those different skill sets, and no one person is going to have all of those things. Right. Yeah. So cooperation, absolutely.
Those are the two main forces.
Yeah. And then you throw in the other piece outside of biology, and it is our consciousness, right? It is our free will. It is the ability to look at 8 billion people on this planet and go, everybody has worth. Everybody brings something to the table. Even that 5'3" that has all the genetic mess ups and all the other things. They have to bring something to the table, right? And maybe they have a brilliant mind and they can see things in a way that other people just can't. And
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking is
crippled in a chair, couldn't do anything.
Perfect example.
He could think and he could talk.
Yeah. And look at how much he's opened up people's minds to what's out there.
Rare exception, though.
Rare exception, 100%. I'm probably going to get banned from Spotify or something for saying this, but going back to we're the U.S., we should just take over the world and make everybody do what we want. One of my things was the Middle East has been screwed up for thousands of years. Why haven't we just made it glass? Or you look at India and you go, unless they're scamming people, what the hell is the value of anything in India? Have you seen that game?
I don't want the H-1Bs. We survived. We became the global hegemon without any.
Right. They don't have
Elon Musk's coders.
Yes, they don't have any physical biological advantage.
No.
Have you seen this game where you can do Google Maps and drop it anywhere in India, and the goal is to find an image without trash?
No. But
and the comments are like, I've been at this for 5 hours. Everything has trash in it. Why? What are we doing? But okay, so, and especially from the Christian perspective, the greatest commandments are loving God and loving each other. That is diametrically opposed to
rational self-interest,
yes,
competition, and living in a world, being biological organisms with a finite life.
Yes.
And living in a world of finite resources.
Yes.
It's incongruent with our reality.
Right. So what are we doing?
It's a slave morality. It's so your slaves don't rebel and they don't think too much about themselves and they are good followers.
Yes. And then you have plenty of cannon.
You can rally them to go kill people when you need to, though, as well.
Yeah.
It's very useful. It's a very good tool for that. So I see why so many governments used it for so long.
Of course. Well, and then you get things like, forever people have been worried about, we're going to run out of land. We're going to run out of resources. We have overpopulation issues. We're destroying the planet. We name the thing of why having a ton of people is bad. And then it becomes, I don't know, then we have population issues, right? China ended up doing the thing where it was a one-child policy.
Yeah.
Elon's a pretty big, he likes to get on his soapbox on this, of how we're at less than replacement level for most populations. I think South Korea is at or maybe it's Japan, is less than one. They're at point something crazy, but you need at least 2.1 children per couple to be at replacement level.
Right.
And even most Western countries are well below that.
Right. So here's the, obviously that's an issue for humanity, the population problem. It's something we've never really encountered before. or at least not historically, we don't have a record of it.
Right.
We've become so successful that, like, I mean, the percentage of people who farm and actually gather like the food we eat every day
Is really low.
And
you might want to bring it a little bit closer.
Is yeah, such a small percentage of the population. The people who do the hard, useful work, like building and maintaining our infrastructure and actually growing and delivering the food. I don't do that. You don't do that.
No.
For civilization to simply survive, the jobs you and I do are completely irrelevant and meaningless to those things.
100. Well, and I've thought a lot about that because, I've been in banking for 20 years and I think, man, I am part of the evil empire. Is this really the way that we want to do this? Look at the number of people that are in crazy amounts of credit card debt.
You see it.
Oh, I see it all the time. And I just think, me as a lender, how am I actually contributing to society? And I can justify it and say, well, this is the way the system works. I help business owners get loans. That employs them, gets food on their family's table. They employ people, puts food on their table, right? So it's great for the economy. It keeps everything going. But is this the way that we actually want to do things? What value am I at? Because I'm not farming. I'm not creating something. I'm a contributor to the current system as it works.
And you seem like an intelligent person who asks questions and seeks understanding. So I'm sure you also know that we also just print the money.
Oh my gosh.
So,
yeah.
So it's like
now we're fighting over monopoly money. This is great.
Yeah. So you're like, and I've done that as well in sales, as not on a financial side, but just being like, oh, what I do, we charge people a lot more than what they can get this for.
Yeah.
Why am I okay charging people who have a physical? Because what I was selling roofs and construction projects, and a lot of times people don't just. I've encountered it. Really rich people were like, "Oh, I just want the roof to be a different color."
Right.
That's been like 2 out of hundreds.
Right.
And we live in a place where there's a higher preponderance of wealthy people as well.
Yeah.
So most of the time, people have a real need and a house that they can barely afford or aren't affording, and they're behind. And
yes.
Like you were saying, all the people in the financial, they bit off more than they could chew or whatever. Now they have a problem with their property being physically destroyed by water. And I show up, good looking, smooth talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey,
yeah,
this is your best
By
option.
the way, whatever you're selling me, Lucas, I'm buying it 10 times out of 10.
Good. So right now it's just good conversation. I like you, Brandon, so I'm enjoying this.
Yeah,
Thank you again for this opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. And so I could rationalize those things, be like, oh, well, the construction companies that don't have a sales force, they stay within the cities because it's more economical for them. They don't have the big sales infrastructure to send people out to smaller towns. We service smaller towns that the more affordable, frankly, better value for your better bang for your buck companies just don't service and things like that. But then it's like, man, most of these people, I'm giving them 15-year loans with high interest, and I got them because I got them to like me and trust me. I got them for every penny basically that they could put down, and I stretched them to their monthly limit. And now these people have a 15-year loan, and a lot of these people are also old, and like they might not even live to. So then it's, and then once you go back to, but we just print the money, then it's all just kind of a wash, no matter like what you're doing.
Right.
So.
Well, and it kind of it 100% goes back to the self-preservation piece, because do you like having a job? Do you like having income?
I like having an income that's above average.
Of course.
I want things, and things cost money, so I'm going to go get it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other interesting piece is we live better. The common person today lives better than kings did throughout history.
Materially.
Oh,
I think socially.
Yes. That's
in a bad state.
Yeah.
I if you don't have anything burning a hole on your tongue, I want to go back to making the value judgment or just making the decision, is this something we want to do?
Yeah, please.
Because I think that's really big, and particularly since we're talking about Elon Musk and the population issue.
Yeah.
Because Japan up until this point has not, so all the countries that have, or at least most of the Western nations that have had below replacement rate birth rates, they have supplemented that. And the United States population, the native population, just people born here and then live here and have kids here, they are below replacement rate, but our population has still grown through immigration.
Yes.
And
legal and illegal.
Right. So I'm not trying to do that in your mic. Japan and Korea are both examples, and now China are both examples of countries that are still able to be wealthy and prosper at having a below replacement rate population. And they certainly have their issues. Don't get me wrong. There are absolutely issues when the population is old heavy. And we're seeing that again with the native, just people born here, people born in from the United States. With that population group, we have our share of issues, and it's being kind of it's being supplemented in many ways through immigration and the types of jobs those people do, and all of those sorts of things. And Japan hasn't fallen. I think Japan is superior to our civilization in terms of the people's, in terms of community. I've been there and spent some time in there when I was over there in the military, and yeah, I think in terms of their quality of life, I mean, you can look at any number of things: their food quality, their quality of life, their education, their community, and don't get me wrong, they have their very fair share of issues as well. They have. I'm not ignorant of those, and China as well. A lot of people would be shocked with like how a lot of Americans and Westerners will be shocked with a lot of Chinese attitudes towards animals and things like that. And we don't have to get into that, but have you eaten dog
lately?
I probably did when I was in Korea, frankly,
and
I kind of felt bad about it. But then I was also like, I was really hungry and really cold, and I was in the field, and that was my only option,
of course,
besides an MRE. So I'm like, at the end of the day, they're just another animal.
Yes.
But like, I love dogs. I would never do that.
Of course,
like just living in the United States, I would never do that. But when you're in a different environment, when you're
when in Rome,
when your material conditions change, then like you were saying, you'd be willing to eat a human if you're starving.
Absolutely.
If you're going to die tonight, or eat your buddy who's already dead, or maybe have to kill a guy to eat him, you might do that.
Oh, for sure.
So I don't think civilization's going to overnight collapse.
No.
Because we have a below replacement rate population. But I do understand that's a problem. I'd like to fix that.
Yes.
I'd like to work on fixing that underlying problem rather than supplementing that with immigration.
Well, and the interesting point there for me is, because if you just blanket look at it, okay, well, cool. You have a population problem, bring in more people. Okay, that's one side of the equation. The other one is look at Japan and look at the US. Japan is homogenous, right? How many foreigners do you have living in Japan? And their culture has been able to be maintained. In the US, I have a buddy that argues that we don't have a culture in the US. And I go, do you live here? Do you know what that actually means? Because if you have a bunch of Indians, to point out of one particular population, come in versus the white population of the US, those are they are coming from a caste system. I used to
very illiberal.
Very illiberal. I used to, on the west side of Washington, there's a lot of Indians, right? You got a lot of tech companies. You got a lot of
one of my best friends in high school. His name is Anish. He's 100% super Indian, obviously.
Well, yeah. And so I had two Indian employees, and one was a princess in the caste system, and the other one was, just a pleb.
She was like a Brahmin.
Yeah.
And Brahmin, Kesh, I can't pronounce it. Probably it's like the priests, the warriors, the merchants, artisans, and then the untouchables. It's like a Brahmin, Kashritya. That's not pronounced right. And then the other two don't matter because
they're the plebs. Yeah. And they were on the same level, same title, same all those things in the work setting. And I would go over and I would give them a directive. And the moment I would walk away, the princess would be like, "Fuck this, you pleb get to do all that shit."
That is not incongruent with Western society for the last many, many hundred years.
Yes. And so when you have those two cultures come together, what do you think's going to happen? You know, I have another buddy that just left Boeing. He's like, man, I had an awesome team. And then they merged my team with another team.
Oh, Boeing's scary, man.
Boeing is so, well, and you want to know why planes are freaking falling out of the sky?
And their whistleblowers.
Are getting assassinated?
There's bad people out there, man. There's some bad dudes out there.
There's some bad dudes, but it's because yes, you have the population issue, but you can't just simply supplement with other cultures.
That's the decision our ruling classes made, and like physically, obviously they can.
Yes,
but there's consequences to that. Just like with
100%.
everything, I certainly see drawbacks in it. And
yeah.
This is one of the things that I have utter disdain and disgust and contempt for our ruling class, is that they don't see our civilization as a good investment. They don't invest in the future and the maintenance and the development of our civilization like Japan does, or like China has. And again, you can have a lot of opinions on China, but one thing they do, and they do it very well for them clearly, as they have grown the last, I mean, in the 1950s, they were still a majority literal peasant farmer, illiterate society. Or again, as many problems that Russia has, before the communists came, they were illiterate in the 1900s.
Yes.
They were literally illiterate peasants in the 1900s, and the communists rounded them all up, and on some civilizational competition level, like whipped their society into shape, got them to read, just basic, got them to be an industrialized society virtually overnight, and that's why they had so many issues, because it was such a shock to their society, and obviously a lot of people suffered, but. That's what they did, and they were investing in themselves. And so people like Elon Musk, I think he's a really smart guy, and he obviously has some good accomplishments. I don't think he's as smart as someone like Stephen Hawking. He's gotten help. He's not a purely self-made person,
right?
But I can recognize him for his skills and abilities, but he doesn't see America as a good investment. He doesn't see, we have a birth rate problem. Let's solve people not having enough kids. Let's solve the economic and social issues around that. No, we're just it's cheap. And like he's literally said in his Twitter rants, it's just cheaper to bring in foreign workers. I don't care about you. And there's some point, like you live in this suburb, and you have your family, and you go out and you have friends, you're essentially a normal person. A mega billionaire like Elon Musk, what does he have, like 20 kids? With
Something.
How many women? Yeah. He's not a normal person.
No,
he lives, and again, when your material conditions change, some people might look at the lifestyle, or even like Trump, for example, he's had like 3 wives, a bunch of kids. He's like, whether you like him politically or not, if you examine his personal life, I think even most of his voters, if you just say like, what would you think of someone who did X, Y, or Z?
And again, remove the name.
Right, remove the name.
Just give them the scenario.
And I've told my wife this, like, with few exception, majority of men, if they had the money and the ability to grab a woman by the pussy, I know there's a lot of men who would take that opportunity. I don't think I would, but
we're going to slip you $1 billion and see what happens, Lucas.
Right. If I had $1 billion and, models around me 24/7, and they didn't care.
Well, and I think this is a really good point too, because something that
his Christian, or the people who consider themselves Christian moral conservatives who voted for him, they would be, if a normal person did that, and whatever other myriad other things, he has done in his life, which I don't get wrapped up about, but the fact is, like, he has done those things.
Right.
They would, they should, on some level, if they're basing their political decision on a set of moral values.
Right.
Again, Trump's not a normal person. He's
no.
However rich he is,
Right.
He lives a radically different life than normal people like us.
Of course. Well, and we talk about the ability to shape our reality, right? Because your reality is different than my reality. And if you have those sorts of means, why wouldn't you bend reality even more so? we talk about self-preservation. The other way of looking at that is we are attracted to the things that will bring us life. And if you have a shit ton of money, you're going to attract a lot of people because you can bring them life.
Right.
And then you get to bend things to your will.
Right. And I just wanted to wrap up a point. I was talking about the elite class in this country, at least the dominant faction of them, because I think there might be some good millionaires and billionaires out there who and good for me is investing in the United States as a civilization,
I'd like this to stick around.
Investing in Western civilization as a whole, and particularly because the rest of Western civilization, Europe, are our military satraps.
Yes.
And as much as it's funny because Trump does a lot of complaining about the cost of NATO and like, oh, Europe needs to protect itself, but like that's the cost of our empire. The European countries don't want us. So it depends on your perspective.
Yes.
And it's so interesting, especially Trump, like the art of the deal. Like, what are that's his message, but what is his actual intention with that? And so the other side of it is that's the cost of empire. We're physically occupying foreign countries. And then, they're the decisions of their ruling class magically align with ours. Oh, imagine that. Oh, freedom, democracy. It was all on their own. I'm sure if Germany just woke up tomorrow and was like, oh, we're kicking out all the American bases now.
Yeah,
we're going to rebuild a gas pipeline with Russia like we had and get cheap gas, and we're going to kick out all the American bases. I don't know how that would go, particularly with someone like Trump in power. And so when he's making all this bluster about wanting, on one side, it is a bad investment monetarily, but again, that's the cost of empire. Do we want to physically occupy Western Europe? Do we want to have a military presence there? And if you do, then that's just the cost of empire.
Yes.
And we also have interest in the European powers not being strong, because then they'd be more independent.
Of course.
The United States before World War II worked, and even after, when the British Empire was still, it was a slow decline, they kind of managed it to not be so catastrophic, and they're on an island and most empires far away.
Yeah.
Far away, they were able to avoid too many. It wasn't like a land empire that collapses and then there's generally lots of death and destruction.
Right. If there was a land bridge between Britain and the rest of Europe during World War II, it would have been done.
Oh yeah, they're toast. But we also, again, as the hegemon, we don't want our puppets to be too strong, because then they might be like, if they had the capacity, again, if they had that capability to kick us out, maybe they would.
Right.
That then becomes a realistic option for them.
Yes.
But the American ruling class, and again, regardless of your opinion of it, they have decided for the last so many decades that that's what we want.
Yes.
And so, is Trump actually trying to? Because he said some very brash. He's literally said in a like a press conference, not just off the cuff, but in a press conference, that like if a European country doesn't pay it's 2%, which he's now raised to what, like 5% GDP.
Yeah.
He said, I hope Russia invades you. He said, I hope they do whatever they want with you.
Yeah.
Such a manly thing to say, right? That's one of the things that, like, even if you don't like him in certain ways, like, at least as a testosterone man, I'm attracted to that. Attracted to that.
It's power.
I wish I had more power.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell people, oh, I hope you get messed up. I don't care about you. I don't have to be polite to you because I have power. I don't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, and that loose cannonness, I think, is part of both the appeal and what gives him power.
Yeah.
If somebody's predictable, then you can manipulate them. And Trump is anything but predictable. He will say so. And, when people freak out about, oh, well, he says this things about tariffs and what he's doing with Greenland and Panama and Canada and all. Okay. It's the art of the deal, guys. Right. He's going to throw out this thing that's going to get all of this attention and all of this rancor. And that's not the point. What he's asking for isn't the point. It's what he's going to get because of the way that he asked.
Right. And so that's yeah, exactly. And we know from sales, like positioning yourselves.
Oh,
you'll your first offer or two, depending on how much rapport you have with somebody, how long you think that they're going to be willing to negotiate with you with will be completely unrealistic, and you know that going into it.
Right.
Is that immoral? That's just dealing, because then if they just say yes, you just made a great deal for yourself.
Of course.
But then, and so Trump's really good at emotionally being like, I'm ready to walk away, and starting at, better than what would seem reasonable scenario for him,
Yes.
his side, and then, walking it back a little bit, and then he gets, a good deal because he's willing and very good at making people uncomfortable. And so then when you're uncomfortable, it's harder to make a good decision. Yeah. So
well, and so on that point, there's a book called Negotiate to Win. The author is the guy that helped Elon negotiate the Twitter deal. And a couple different things from that book. One of the points is Americans suck at negotiating. We are just bad at it, right? Because we want fairness.
Back to cars, I can tell you something really embarrassing.
Please.
When I was young, the car, especially from sales, I just bought my cars at the price.
Oh no!
I never got
Oh, it's $16,999. Okay, I guess it's $16,999.
Well, the second car I bought because we kind of needed it, I guess, because my wife totaled her car and.
I don't know this. We'll have to explore that.
Her bumpkin family gave her a car that was not safe or legal to drive. So I was like, we're buying you a car. We're buying you a real car.
Yeah.
That we don't need Dirty Dan to go fix every week. And so,
yes.
But the first car I bought in cash, actually, and I didn't take the sticker price, but I didn't really understand negotiation. I was just like, this is what I want to buy it for. And
right.
I just knew to ask a little bit less than what it was. But the second car, when I was in sales, so that I should have known better, I just.
Yeah. Well, and I
was a lay down sale.
Somebody said
I
this.
just walked in and signed it.
And I've heard this multiple times, but
very embarrassing.
You have to be willing to walk away, right? That is the key to negotiation. Whereas other cultures outside the U.S., if you don't negotiate, it's offensive, right? And so in this,
really?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me which ones.
Especially look at like the Middle East.
Oh yeah,
a lot of them, right? If you go over there and visit, and the price for that, whatever it is $100, and you just say, okay, here's your $100, they'll say, no.
Really? Wow.
Offer me 80. Like it's
wow.
considered rude not to. I think one of the main ones that comes to mind is Egypt. People go over there and visit the pyramids and all those things, and as they're coming back from their tour, they want to grab merchandise or whatever, and they'll go into the shop and try and offer full price, and the people go, "What are you doing? No, offer me less." But so Negotiate to Win, they play out the scenario where they'll take two teams, and because he does seminars and he'll get these people together, and he does this scenario. Two teams, you're both nation states, both have nukes, and you're going to negotiate to, I don't know what the point, I think it's like to win is mainly the point, right? Take out the other nation. And so you negotiate, and then each team goes separately, and then they have to decide whether or not they're going to use their nuke or if they're going to take that option off the table. Well, how often do both sides decide to take the nuke off the table? How often do both teams decide to nuke the other side? And how often does only one side? Well, since rarely do both sides say, we're going to take our advantage off the table. Why would you?
Right.
And so as soon as the person gives up the advantage, as soon as one team says, yes, I'll nuke you, and the other team says, no, I won't nuke you, there's no coming back from that. So if you're somebody like Trump, if you're somebody in a position of power, why would you ever give grace? Why would you ever give up your advantage?
Right. And I mean, it's probably apparent. That's one thing that appeals to me very much about Trump is that he's not. You can tell he knows how to negotiate, and you can tell he's a boss. He's a rich guy. He owns businesses. He tells people what to do. He does it on the world stage. And again, aligning behavior with like state ideology has been a problem for Western civilization since liberal democracy has become hegemonic.
Yep.
When we were empires, we're like, oh, we're the French Empire, we're the British Empire, we're strong and we do what we want because we can, and we're so great. And,
right.
And that was like this, it was an openly narcissistic state ideology, and then they did things in their self-interest, and like, we're so great because we have more resources, now we have more cheap slaves over there, not here. And
Right. Yeah.
and so Trump's behavior kind of aligns, not that the state ideology is changing. And I see myself as an outside looking in. The progressive liberals and the conservative liberals, to me, I see are nearly identical.
Yep.
Even though within like the modern, the average voter sees them as like they're really radically. Oh my God, they're so far away, a Trump voter versus an Obama voter or a Hillary Clinton supporter or whatever. I see myself from the outside. I'm not in that liberal framework whatsoever.
Yep.
So looking from the outside in, Trump's behavior aligns more with what a hegemonic power would and should be doing. We should be, to some degree, going around bossing people around, telling people what to do. That and so even though I have a lot of criticisms of anyone, including Trump, that's something that absolutely appeals to me and appeals intrinsically to a lot of people. They just like that behavior about him.
Yeah. Well, and I like that it's honest. Because to your point, right, you have both sides. And if you look back, I mean, go back to Eisenhower, go back before, I would say before we were a major world power, post World War I and II. Since when has either side not had the goal of world empire? They just dress it up differently and are dishonest. Oh, we're trying
to be the nice guy, but we're the global hegemon. And we go around making all these wars and bombing all these people and sending, pumping dumb kids like me full of war propaganda to go kill the bad guy. But we present ourselves as we're freedom loving democracy, everyone gets their own choice, freedom for everybody. Everybody gets to do what they want, break down all social structure and just have complete chaos. So that way it manipulates you better. And, but then they frame it as, it's everyone's like freedom and liberty. And we're doing all of these things. It's just like I said, it's just incongruent. It's inconsistent. And so you're just a scumbag and no one likes you and no one respects you. And that's why we're seeing a lot of the issues. One of the ways that normal people like us and people like me who would be willing and desired to be like, we should just like if we need more oil, like we should just go take we should just go take their oil. Like, why not? We should go do that. Like that's actually a good thing. In a certain context.
Of course.
I'm not happy America did what it did, but people who are willing to do that, you need people like that for a civilization to function. And the way those people protest, people who only have power within like their own family, who aren't mega billionaires, don't own companies, don't, this and that, what they can do is they can just leave the military.
Right.
Or they can just,
you're not going to affect change.
They can leave Boeing. Like you said, your buddy who left Boeing, he's like, even though my self-interest is satisfied here, I just really hate what's going on.
Yeah, I can't contribute to this anymore.
Right. What they're like said, this is not something I want to be doing, that conscious decision.
Right.
And so now, so now Western civilization and the United States as an empire, as the global hegemon, has this problem where our military is being eroded.
Yeah, badly.
Our capacity to, again, going back to like Russia, Ukraine, to sit 500,000 men in a trench and have grenades get dropped on them, have them sit through artillery fire, have them locate, close with, and destroy the enemy is massively reduced. We have our capacity to do that. It's just the United States, the global empire, has a lot of problems, and a lot of our capacity to assert ourselves since like 1990 has been diminished.
Well, and I think some of that is the messaging. What I grew up, my dad, my grandparents, everybody, it was Fox News, it was Rush Limbaugh, it was all the stuff, right? And
ridiculous these days.
Oh, yeah. And I remember when Obama came around, and I'm post 9/11 at this point, and I'm going,
that's when I was in the military.
What the hell is going on? And Obama comes up and he goes, hope and change. Right? That was his messaging, was hope and change.
Sounds good.
Because we're coming out of the Bush years. We're coming out of all this war.
Bush said we were on a crusade in the Middle East, and I believed him.
Yes.
I was a crazy Christian
Well,
full of war propaganda.
But to your point about how both sides, like, they're way more aligned than they like to appear.
Oh yeah.
Obama was not hope and change. Mofo ended up drone striking and killing way more and starting wars. And he was one of the worst warmongers out there. Like, if you hate Bush, you should hate Obama just as much, if not more.
One thing that personally that touched my life with all of that and Obama was Operation, I think it's Timber Sycamore.
Yeah. I think you can actually rotate that more towards you. Like twist it.
I don't know which direction it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rather than talking into the side of it. Okay,
Yeah, get handsy with it.
Okay. This large thing in front of my face. Was Obama's order to, and this is something you can look up. I believe it's called Timber Sycamore.
Okay.
I believe it was in 2011 or 2013.
Yeah.
That was when I was in the Marines, and he ordered the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad.
Yes.
And my unit specifically, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines in Hawaii, got put on standby to go because we might have been one of the units to go invade Syria.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like I might have been one of those dudes over there from Obama specifically. Like I might have been personally over there.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time, it was funny because we were like, again, we had this understanding like, oh, we have this overwhelming military dominance. Like, yeah, we're going to go mess up some guys who aren't going to be able to fight back very well. You know, it'll be fun, this and that. But right. But at the time they had whether, I'm not in Syria, I don't know. But the story was that Bashar al-Assad like gassed his own people and that he used sarin gas specifically. Yeah. And sarin gas is not protected by
your gear.
DoD standard gas masks. Yeah. So we were like, we might all die this horrible death by
I'm sticking in Hawaii. Thank you very much.
So we were like, and that was a real, at least the military treated it like a real thing in Iraq. Like the initial push in Iraq, everyone was in MOP Gear 4 with all their chemical warfare stuff on, even in the middle of the desert, super hot. I hear the stories from the old guy. Yeah, a little sweaty.
I don't want to hang out in that barracks.
Yeah, plus the, all your other gear on top of being in a gas.
Because what is it, 100 pounds worth of gear?
It more or less, it depends. The guys, they told me they were making long range movements, so they had their large packs on. Like it wasn't like just like a day pack. Yeah, because they're doing a long range movement. They're out in the desert, so they had to carry a lot of stuff with them. Yeah, they were probably carrying close to 120 pounds.
Jeez.
Plus the full MOP gear. And then cold weather's worse because you need more clothes.
Right.
You need more warming layers, and so you'll even get if you're in like subarctic or like snowy conditions, you'll literally get a sled that you wrap with a string you tie around your waist, and because you can't physically carry all that in, so you rotate the sled between the new guys, of course. Yeah. And squad leader might do it once just to show he can do it too.
Yeah, be a team player.
He'll do it the first time, and then he's
the rest of you take this.
But so I might have been part of that.
Yeah.
And
how interesting that he was just kicked out. What was that, a month ago?
Yeah, wasn't too long ago.
Yeah. Well, I think during the Bush years, oh gosh, I wish I could remember all the details, but the main point was that somebody from the Pentagon had that list of I think it was 7 countries.
5 countries in 7 years.
Yeah. And Syria's in there. Libya was in there.
The only one we haven't overthrown so far is Iran.
That's
the last one.
Yeah.
And we're not taking the oil.
What do you mean by that?
We're not taking their oil. On some level we are. Like I think it's Exxon that's taking like the northern Syrian oil.
Oh yeah.
But we're not like going there, taking over their oil resources and then like shipping it back here so that way we have cheap oil because we seized it rather than like producing it and having to do all the work ourselves. Right. Where that's not what we're doing.
Why do you think we're not doing that?
Well, I don't think it'd be that much cheaper. The United States, anyone who's looked into it, we have enormous oil and natural gas resources. We don't need to import anyone's oil if we don't want to.
No.
This will be really controversial, but there's more people talking about it now than there has been in the last 5 years. So I don't think it'd be that controversial to say this.
I like controversy.
To say this these days. Even 5 years ago, I think it'd be way more controversial to say this. But there's a lot of way smarter and way people with way more clout than I will ever have in my life. There's people like Professor Jeffrey Sachs and others who have pointed out that it's the Israel lobby for our foreign policy in the Middle
APAC?
East. Specific, APAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, what is APAC if not a foreign lobby?
Right. Well, and Thomas Massey is one of the few senators that I've seen where he's said,
Thomas Massey,
when I got in there, they wanted me to put out this statement and they'd even write it for me, and I wanted nothing to do with it. And then they came after him and tried to.
Now his wife's dead.
And now his wife's dead. Oh gosh,
dude, that's scary. There's some bad dudes out there.
I love Massey is probably I love that he wears the pin showing the national debt.
Oh yeah, I don't know that much about him, but I know he's spoken out against APAC, so I like him for that.
Oh, I do too. Yeah.
That's
also speaking
really
of
good.
Lobbyists in DC, man, APAC, if you are, that was, so one of the things I want to make sure we get to for sure is your upbringing, going from Catholic to, and I remember growing up Mormon. One of the unique things within Mormonism, and I always considered Mormonism with, under the Christian umbrella, right? Jesus Christ is Savior.
Right.
There's a lot of differences there, so I understand why other Christian religions don't think they're Christian, but whatever. One of the unique things is you are adopted into the house of Israel, right? And so,
but are you Jewish? Adopted,
right? And so, even to the point where you get something called a patriarchal blessing, and you are given what your house is. So you are one of the 12 tribes of Israel. So very tight-knit, tied into, I think of most of Christendom, and it's, the Bible is the Word of God. You have the Old Testament, but you have the New Testament. Mormons look at it and go, well, the Old Testament is just as important as the New Testament. Being God's people is just as important. And that tie-in, I remember, you have 9/11, and then I have that religious background, and I go, oh, why wouldn't I be as pro-Israel as possible? I want Israel to win everything. I want to support them. We got to, I don't want to send money to anybody else. If we need to send some aid to Israel. And now I look at it and go, what the hell?
And and I had a very similar, it's so funny. So my dad was an engineer. Those people are renowned for having no personality and being overly literal,
a little dry,
almost borderline autistic.
Yes,
in how poorly social.
Yes,
how bad their social skills are.
Yes,
crazy. I was
going to say
relatively successful in sales for a time, and
because you are the opposite of that. Very well spoken.
Depends how comfortable I am in the environment.
Of course,
I'm. We went out drinking and dancing last night a lot. It's crazy. Most people don't dance these days, or even the ones do. They're doing the cuck shuffle. They're not really expressing.
I don't know how to dance.
Don't get me wrong. I need some alcohol. I'm not the most. Everyone has their insecurities and inhibitions and whatever.
Yeah,
but I don't need that much. And once I do, I'm out there throwing my body around. Yeah, I'm expressing myself, man. Who cares?
Yeah.
I'm having a good time. But
good. We need to take the ladies out.
So yes. And actually Hannah wanted me to ask you that.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
You should take us, because we normally go to the clubs in downtown Coeur d'Alene and do that. But we want to go to Nashville North with you guys and learn some. We'd like to learn from you guys some country dancing, some different stuff. Just we've been going to the same couple places, all the time. So
we should hit all those spots. We'll go with you.
Okay, we'll make plans.
Yeah,
but I was again so my family growing up were engineers, hard ass mechanic, no education, just hard working man. Grandfather, and then a lot of military people kind of dispersed in between. But my dad wasn't in the military or anything like that. Yeah. Just really, I heard from a lot of families, and I observed my family was very strict compared to average, extremely strict. I heard adults tell my parents to their face in front of us that you are psychotic, and I think I'm happy my parents gave me some structure, and I'm happy they were a little more strict than if they were not strict enough. But I think there were definitely times where a lot of times it was purely self-interested and
Yeah.
wasn't in the, a lot of times the strictness was not in the interest of teaching me a lesson.
Yeah.
And was just,
For the sake of.
I'm just going to punish you because I don't. And so like whatever, but you know, I'm here, I'm 32. Like I can't blame like I have to live my own life. It's whatever. Like you get over it. But like that's just to help you understand how strict my family was growing up.
Yeah. Okay. So what?
Super hard ass strict Catholic people.
Okay. So were you guys? Well, there's a word for it, but were you Christmas and Easter Catholics, or were you
every
week
and those holy days of obligation that most Christians don't go to?
So where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Maryland, right on the border with DC again.
Oh yeah, okay.
Military industrial complex, politicians, all those.
Yeah,
and it's great dichotomy out there because you have overwhelming poverty and crime mixed with literally the people who run the country and are mega millionaire billionaires.
Yes.
So that was weird, kind of being again in that middle ground. But I was an engineer. He wasn't some rich guy. He wasn't a politician. But we were.
But lived well.
We were materially very well off.
Yes.
So, Maryland, grew up there, lived there for the first 18 years of my life. Briefly hopped over to Arizona. Once I graduated high school, my dad decided to move for his work. And then I just waited to go to boot camp after that. Then went all over. So I joined the Marine Corps straight out of high school. Then, funnily enough, DC was my first duty station because I was on a. I wasn't just a rifleman. Okay, I got selected in boot camp for a special program called the Presidential Support Program.
Okay.
We provide the Marines who guard the 8th and I barracks at Marine in Washington, D.C. There's a barracks where the commandant of the Marine Corps, that's the top general of the Marine Corps, who runs the Marine Corps, that's where he lives. That's his house.
Oh, okay.
So we give 18-year-olds live rounds, and they guard that guy.
Brilliant.
And so I was one of those guys. So I was one of those guys. Him and the chief of naval operations, who's the highest admiral in the Navy, who literally runs the Navy. And they guard him at his house at the Navy Yard, which is 2 blocks away. That was my first duty station. They select only infantry guys for that in boot camp.
Why do they do that?
Because they, infantry Marines are real Marines, and they just want guys. You're going to be the real physical security.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps has always historically been very infantry based. And it was when I was in, it was very controversial when we had the first non-infantry career base. Cause like they move officers around, they do lots of stuff. So they get a broad skill set.
Yeah.
But we had the first non-infantry based commandant in the history of the Marine Corps. And people were like, oh my God, this is going to ruin the Marine Corps because this guy was a pilot and not an infantryman, not a grunt.
I love all that. I love the like inner fighting and the disrespect for it cracks me up.
And like my younger brother, he went into the Air Force and he was a cryptolinguist. So he learned a language and he worked mostly with civilians actually. Yeah. So his military experience was diametrically opposed to mine. Yeah. Aside from me, if I had ever gone to combat, that's the only thing I could have done to make it. But that's not, that's out of my control. But anyways, and I still love him. I don't care. He's doing his own. He's not an infantry guy. He's a very different person to me. He belonged where he went. He made good choices for his life. He would not have liked or done well in the infantry.
Yeah.
I was a very angsty young man. I had a lot of energy I needed to get out. So the infantry was really good for me. It was perfect. Ground me down.
Yeah.
Showed me I wasn't as tough as I thought.
Just right down to the nub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, getting back to, so after DC, that's when I went to Hawaii. Another really rough duty station, let me tell you. Just terrible. So no, it was amazing. It was paradise.
Yeah. So were you at where in Hawaii? Were you
Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii? There's a Marine Corps base there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
And
it's so gorgeous.
Dude,
I love it over there.
Really quick, man. If any young Marines ever listen to this, like you guys have it good. Like you're young, you're getting paid to live where people go to vacation.
Yes.
You have private beaches. Like get out of your barracks, stop playing video games, put down the bottle, go do something. Get out of your barracks room, go do something. You live in a tropical island paradise.
Yes.
And you're not actually paying the real cost of living there because you're there as man, that was something that blew my mind.
That's amazing advice.
I just have to get that out there, man. It just blew my mind. So many, or Okinawa, for example, as well. Like, there's nothing to do. It's like learn a few Japanese phrases, go out there, go do stuff. And so, because nowadays most people that's most people's idea of paradise. Like, low population island where people aren't bothering me. There's not too many cars, but there's still like stores. I can still go do stuff, and there's still a city if I want to go to it.
Yeah.
Okinawa was that,
Yes.
bro? Like, and so, anyways,
Oh, it's so good. I love it.
Stationed in Hawaii, they quote forward deployed us to Okinawa, Japan, and then I went all over Asia, Southeast Asia, mainland Japan, South Korea, American occupied Korea, Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. Stopped in Guam once.
Wow. You've seen the world.
A little bit. I've seen a good bit of it.
Yeah.
Touched it.
Yeah.
I wasn't, I was still there on the military. Wasn't like deeply embedded in the society, but yeah, I've seen a fair bit of Asia.
Yeah.
And then I did that twice. So
yeah. So you went in at 18, and when did you get out?
So I got out at 20. I was about to turn 23 because I have a late birthday, and I got out a few months early. I wouldn't have got out till January the next year, but they were trying to downsize, so they were offering people a voluntary. You can get out early if you want. We're trying to downsize. If you want to get out early, both our interests align. Yeah.
Well, and knowing how much our military is in trouble with recruitment and everything, looking back, that seems like such a silly thing.
Because I joined, right. And again, the needs of the military, sorry, keep bumping your mic. I'm trying not to mess your audio.
I don't know if it's coming out. I think you're right. Because I keep touching mine too.
You might have, I'm hitting it with my chin. You might have good editing software.
I'm making love with it over here. So.
Okay.
You're good.
Well, because I joined, I think shortly after the surge, they were taking everybody. I was disappointed, man. There were Marines, there were recruits at boot camp who failed every hike. And as particularly an infantryman, that's literally more important than your marksmanship. Your ability to get where you need to be with all your gears, like successfully, and be able to operate wherever you're at. Yeah, that's literally more important than how good you are at shooting your rifle. Because it doesn't matter how good you are if you can't physically get there and still function. So there were Marines who couldn't climb the rope, who passed, became Marines, recruits who could barely do pull-ups. There were recruits that failed every hike. There were even Marines, so graduated boot camp in the Marine Corps. There were Marines who graduated infantry school who failed every hike. That disappointed me. I was disappointed. The physical requirements of until I had been in for a few years and started getting the joint pain from the long term, like doing 20-mile hikes on concrete with 100 pounds on your back. After doing that for a few years, I'm like, oh, now this. Once I started getting joint pain, that's when but the raw muscular cardiovascular requirements of the Marine Corps didn't. I mean, they were hard. Don't get me wrong, but I was disappointed with how many people got passed.
Yeah. Well, and
it made my struggle feel less worthy. Why did I try so hard?
Right. If you could have just skirted by.
That's why I got D's in high school. I straight up told my parents, I said, I'll graduate.
Yep.
I'll graduate and the military won't care what my GPA was. Yeah. And now going to college, no one cares what my GPA was. So I was right. Of course. Right. It was immature and shouldn't have done that.
Right.
But I wasn't wrong.
Well, my whole thing in high school was I'm not doing homework. I don't care if I get B's and C's. I'm going to ace every single one of my tests and screw the rest of
the way the grading system, all your tests are 80% of your grade.
Yeah. Why? Yeah. So I'm
go play with your friends, play video games on your weekends.
Right.
Why would you
go and
you get the same piece of paper
to get a 4.0 when I can? Yeah, exactly.
So so that was my Marine Corps experience, and I was actually really scared to get out.
Were you? Why?
Because I was a young man. My entire adult life was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Well, and what did you expect or plan on when you first got in? Were you like, I'm going to do this for 20 years?
Yes.
And okay.
I wanted nothing more than to be a Marine. That's all I wanted to be. And my identity and was very wrapped up with our state, with the United States as a civilization, as an empire. My identity was aligned with that and attached to that. And the Marine Corps was one of the other big reasons why I joined the Marine Corps. And when I was in the infantry was again, when we're going back to state ideology, the Marine Corps and particularly the infantry was extremely illiberal. Yeah. It was extremely harsh and metric based and not egalitarian.
Yes.
And there were harsh consequences if you couldn't. Again, I was just talking about. That's why I was disappointed when there were people passed. But once you're in the actual like fleet, the actual deploying units. That's like boot camp's the easiest part because
Of course.
that's your foot in the door. Actually, boot camp is the easiest part of your Marine Corps career.
Yeah.
The training you do actually in the fleet is way harder than anything you do at boot camp.
Yeah.
And so once you get there, that's where the real training begins.
Yeah.
Because all that stuff, boot camp, those are baby steps to make sure you're basic. You know, they have to tier
Basic competence.
They have to tier you in. You can't just drop raw civilians into an operating military.
Of course.
You have to build them up a little bit.
Yeah, or tear them down, depending on which
both,
way you like
both
it.
a lot of the
Both,
time.
both,
So
yeah.
and
well, because you
so
can't
that-
have individuals either, right?
Exactly.
They need to become
Exactly.
a part of the system.
yeah, you're and so I was attracted to that. I was conscious of that in the Marine Corps. It was collective. It was not individual. It was extremely harsh. It was extremely illiberal. It did not have. It was okay. It was happy to go hurt people for its interest.
Yeah.
And
was that what was the draw of that for you?
I'm a man.
You're yeah. Okay.
I'm a man, and
Yeah.
that's my ultimately. If you want to push away all the BS,
Yeah.
we're hunting. We have to assert ourselves in society to get
Yeah.
resources to make money.
Yep.
So that way we can live whatever lifestyle we want to live.
Yep.
And if you want more money, you have to be willing to make more people uncomfortable, to make to work harder, work longer, to assert yourself on the world stage more.
Yeah.
If you want more resources. And
Yep.
so that what I thought America should be doing was more aligned with the ideology of the Marine Corps.
Yes.
And the way I wanted to live my life personally, I wanted to be around tough men.
Yeah.
And when I was in the infantry, there weren't even women allowed in.
I was going to ask you about that. I wasn't sure if do you think they should be?
No.
No. Yeah.
And I think it's,
Yeah. And is it, I mean, you're talking about the guys that couldn't cut it and
Right.
were failing all over the place.
and I know this a little bit more specific. I know more specifics around this because my platoon sergeant was one of the combat instructors sent to go run the female Marine Corps infantry officer course. They're OIC or whatever it's called. They were setting up it because before you can get units, you need leaders, and so then you can fill the Marines in.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were trying to train. While I was in, they were trying to train these female Marine Corps lieutenants to be infantry officers. And our platoon sergeant was telling us over Facebook, I forget his name, but he would talk to us on the weekends, talk to our, the guys who were his squad leaders below him, his junior leaders. And then, of course, they would share the word with us and pass. And so we had an inside look into all this. So this isn't like some of my opinions around it aren't just like, oh, I'm a man and I don't like girls or something.
Right.
I've got a wife and you've got a wife.
Oh, and she's wonderful. And I'm pretty sure she could kick my ass.
She's pretty strong.
Yeah.
We've sparred a few times actually. And it's funny because she doesn't have a martial arts background growing up. Or
Do you?
A little bit. We did kung fu, which like sounds silly, but we did some sparring, and you learn to fight on a basic level, and so it's good for you. And
of course,
and then of course in the Marine Corps we had, again, it's something that is looked down upon and laughed at a lot from like the fighting scene.
Yeah.
Like real fighters and even a lot of Marines, they think it's silly, but if you have nothing, it's better than nothing, and you get hit. You get hit, you get choked out, and you get to hit and choke out other people. And that's, if you have to maybe hit or choke someone out, then it's better that you have had done that than if you had not.
Did you see the clip of the Ukrainian and Russian soldier that it got down to knife fight?
I did, yeah. The Tuvin.
Yeah.
Dude, I watched, did you watch it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Tuvin grabbed the blade of the knife with his bare hand and bit the Ukrainian's fingers to make him let go of the knife, and then he stabbed him with his own knife and killed him. That's brutal. Combat. That is, yeah.
Well, and there's that clip in Saving Private Ryan, right, where they're tussling, and oh gosh, that's the hardest part of that. And that movie is hard to watch. But yeah, I would take a little bit of training, because if I get into a situation like that,
maybe if he had done if that Ukrainian had known a Marine Corps standard, front kick, when that Tuvin came charging at him, he might have lived. He might have had the opportunity to present his weapon to shoot him and not get into a hand-to-hand fight.
Yeah.
Which he lost and died.
Yeah.
And so the point of all that is that my wife has no, and so when we sparred, she is very, as you know, she's fit, has a lot of muscle on her, particularly for a woman. Her whole family look like Vikings. They're very well built.
Oh,
they're very
okay.
stout.
Yeah, yeah.
Very hardy people.
Yes.
In the best way. Her mom's shoulders are broader than yours and I's.
Damn.
My wife is the runt of her family.
Oh,
in frame.
Okay.
In frame. And
that's wild.
So she's throwing her whole body weight. She's only like 20 pounds less.
Yeah,
she's not a dainty woman.
No.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And but I was like, and so I would like dodge. She hit me in, hit me in the shoulder and stuff, and I'm like, babe, we're sparring.
Yeah.
And she doesn't. She literally hasn't.
You still love me, right?
She literally had never had. It didn't occur to me that someone had like literally never once in their life gotten into a fight or sparred or had any kind of martial art, because that was my whole life. I grew up doing kung fu, and then I went into the infantry.
Yeah.
And so, and I got into fights growing up because I would run my mouth and not, and when someone would run their mouth at me, I'd feel like a desire to make them stop.
Of course.
And so I didn't get in that many fights, but I did get into some fights growing up.
Yeah.
And
and what's your
so she threw her whole, sorry.
Yeah, no, please.
Just so I'm not randomly, she would threw her whole body weight. I'm like, she probably, if she hit me clean, probably would have knocked me out. But she didn't, because she's slow and lumbering and telegraphs the whole thing, winds all the way back, throws her whole body. And so, there's no way she was ever going to hit me with that. But if she did,
it would have been.
Yeah. And so I was so proud of her for that, because I'm like, your instinct was to just go balls to the wall violence.
Yes. That's so good.
And so I was so proud of her for that. I'm like, babe,
Yes.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
She wasn't meek. She didn't just ball up and get scared. She was like, it's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. So that's a healthier instinct than if she were to
cowering
be right.
Or,
and so
or
I was
back.
I had to teach her, like, babe, don't knock me out.
Yeah. Apply a little bit of restraint, a little bit.
Yeah, but I was proud of her.
Oh, that's funny. So, so somewhere in there, and I want to come back to the religious aspect here in a minute, but somewhere in there on the military and on the U.S. Empire, there's some disillusionment there, which is probably what also led to you getting out. But where did that start to creep in? Where did that come from?
That started to creep in. Again, I was under Obama, and I saw all this social change, which I viewed as negative.
Yeah.
And, you may view it as positive. You or the collective you, whoever might listen, may view it as positive. I viewed it as negative, and it was, again, coming from our ruling class. So when I joined, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still in effect. So you couldn't even be openly homosexual when I was in the military.
It's still wild to me that was Clinton.
Literally. So
literally,
I'm 18 years old. I'm standing post in D.C. All these other 18-year-old Marines. When we get word that this is going to go into effect, like later that year when they pass the law, I already mentioned Israel, so I feel like I can say this. Just the way we spoke to each other, 18-year-old Marine to another 18-year-old Marine, we're like, oh, there's going to be all these gays running around now. Like, what? Like, we didn't know. We were the immature young guys. We're like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, living in the barracks, like, we're naked in front of each other. Like, I'm going to have to worry if my roommate is like
checking me out.
Or whatever.
Make a move.
And at that time, again, like, you and I both grew up where it wasn't open and accepted. Like, gay was a slur.
Right.
If you were a homosexual, like, that was something you didn't want to be.
I'm pretty sure fag, gay, and retard were every other word when I was a teenager.
And other things. And so
other things. Yeah.
Yes, we actually said, oh, there's going to be a bunch of fags running around. Like, and that was and so we were just kind of confused and like, okay, whatever. And then basically I just became I always had an understanding, and maybe this is something from being the son of an engineer, is that I like to look at things as a system.
Yeah.
A system. And so I understand that the United States is a system. It's not just, countries don't just like exist. And again, America as the empire, as the civilization, as the empire. I understood that, and I understood my place in that, and I was where I wanted to be in that, and I was working, and all my interests were aligning, and I was like, this is great. I'm going to go meet in the Marine Corps, blah blah blah. And so I saw the elite, I saw the ruling class of this country making social changes that I viewed as negative.
Yeah,
and then I realized the state ideology was preaching all this stuff that was diametrically opposed to my lifestyle in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps was basically fascistic.
Yes.
Particularly the infantry. Again, harsh punishments. There's strict regulations. It was not uncommon for another violent grown man who might have killed someone to get in your face, scream at you, maybe rough you up a little bit too, if you weren't in line.
Yes.
Like, and we weren't allowed, like, when I was in, there was a big thing against hazing, and like hazing is bad. And there's a point to where training becomes unprotected. Kind of like when I mentioned as a kid, there were sometimes my punishments were not, there was no purpose or meaning to it. It was just purely like vindictive, essentially.
Yeah.
And there's a point where training and punishment and thing is and I definitely saw and received vindictive training.
Yeah.
And there's a point where it's not conducive. And anyways,
right.
that's like real hazing.
Right.
A lot of stuff that they were getting rid of, I did not view as hazing. I viewed, oh no, that's good training.
Right.
And even I
give me an example.
So like good training would be like having to run a lot, or having a grown man get in your face and scream at you and make you emotionally uncomfortable, or have you, run around and do physical training is for punishments, or maybe even push you, maybe even punch you, maybe even get the squad leaders in one night on a room inspection when everyone's in the rooms alone, and they rough you up, because the consequences are life or death when you're in the infantry.
Yes.
If you mess something up, then when you go to combat,
right, you want to be corrected before it's going to be fatal.
Right, it's actually good for you.
Yes.
And so I'm speaking, just so I'm not a hypocrite. Like in the time, don't get me wrong, I was a young man and I had emotions. I didn't understand everything. I'm looking from the outside in. So
of course,
and I also understand that a lot of that, I was on the receiving end of a lot of stuff that was real hazing, that was just purely vindictive, had no purpose, wasn't constructive or anything.
Right.
But when you're sending people in to literally go kick doors, like I was talking about do a contact patrol, you need guys who are bad dudes. You need some bad guys going in there. You need some killers. And
yes.
Yeah, when the consequence of messing up at your job is not, the paperwork is delayed, or someone doesn't make enough money in the right amount of time.
Yeah.
It's like you die and people around you die.
Yes.
So
you got to weed out any weaknesses.
Exactly. Weed out any weakness. And
I think men,
and I realize the incongruence with, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. Well, all I was going to say is is it Pete Hegseth? How do you say his name?
Pete Hegseth is like I think it's something with the military, Secretary of Defense, or
something with the
Joint Chiefs of Staff,
DOD.
He's something Trump's military guy. He's Trump's military guy.
Yeah. Right, because they've been asking him about women in the military and all those things. And I don't know why this is popping into my head, but there was that G.I. Jane with Demi Moore movie, right, where she just like shaves her head and I
never watched it. I don't watch a lot of modern movies.
Yeah, I mean, this is like 90 something. Anyways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But there's I personally, I don't care if you're man or a woman, if you can get the job done, right? If you can carry the weight, if you can, like, if you've got a guy that's weak versus a woman that,
strong
Viking stock.
Yeah.
I'll take the Viking stock over the weak dude.
I mean, my wife does pull-ups. How many men do pull-ups?
Not a lot.
Not a lot of men.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Marine Corps,
how many people can do one correct pull-up?
I mean, average civilian, like it's probably less than half.
Oh, easy. Well, because what do we have? 70% overweight and 40% obesity in this country. I'll bet you it's less than 10% that can do an actual pull-up.
We went roller skating one day a few years ago, and it was like some middle school birthday while we were there.
Yeah.
And some poor child came and bumped into my wife and just bounced off of her.
She's a wall. No. Well, okay. So, but then there's so you can physically do things, and then there's the emotional side. And when you're getting screamed at in your face and you're getting punishment and you're getting all these things, how many women emotionally are going to break down versus a man that's going to break down in that situation? When you guys are clearing a building and some insurgents or whatever it is, something unexpected happens, how are you going to go into that mode and have everything have been weeded out so that you can carry out that mission successfully versus Is that American Sniper where it starts off and he's having to maybe shoot a kid? If you walk into a
I don't
room,
know.
and there's-
I didn't watch it. Chris Kyle was seen as very negatively when I was, again, that movie
Oh.
came out when I was in the Marine Corps,
Oh,
and
yeah.
people did not like him.
yeah,
Because
That-
I believe, I didn't look too closely into it. I didn't care that much, but
Yeah.
the long story short, my understanding of the situation is that he either exaggerated or outright lied about some of his stuff.
is that
Oh,
kind of a stolen valor sort of situation?
I mean, you could call it that if you want, but it's a tale as old as time.
Right.
Oh, men exaggerating their adventure stories.
Right.
Oh,
The fish was this big.
that's never happened before. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, should he be doing it, making money off of it, profiting off of it? No. But
Well, so but the point in it
My life goes
was, there. I think he was potentially going to have to shoot a kid in the movie or something, or a woman, right. So if you're I think men are able to make those hard, emotionless decisions typically easier than women are, and so I'm kind of going off into a weird tangent here.
no,
Doesn't
you're
matter,
good.
But
Women are psychologically more
well, they're nurturers.
aligned. Exactly. They're psychologically more aligned to be nurturing.
Yes.
And men are psychologically more aligned to make a decision in their rational self-interests.
Yes.
and disregarding empathy. That's also why men are the overwhelming majority of psychopaths and violent crime committers,
Why,
because
yes,
we are better at being psychopaths. And when you have to kill someone, again, you have to some way emotionally deal with it. And I also think that's a big reason why we have so much PTSD, is
Yeah.
because people are raised in this society where, like, oh, violence is so bad. And even like when I was growing up, like my dad tells me when he was growing up, like low level violence where no one gets seriously injured was a lot more common.
Yeah.
Like just getting into a fist fight with another boy in school, it wasn't seen as-
Right.
like, yeah, they disincentivized it, but also he told me that they had a school disciplinarian
Yeah.
that was a position in school, and that there were times where they would take him and other boys out who were like fighting in class and being disruptive because they're arguing, yelling, whatever. They would take him out to the back of the school, give him boxing gloves, and
Have at it.
and say, get,
Yes.
and then it's over, and then go back to class, sit down, be quiet. You get your energy out, you get your frustration out, you get your emotions out. And like, I've had my butt kicked before. It's a weird feeling sometimes. Even when you get your butt kicked, there's this weird camaraderie you feel towards the other guy.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
Well,
Because you
there's a
lost.
respect built in there.
Right. You're like, oh,
Actually, both ways.
oh, you're the boss now. You kicked my
Ye-
butt. You're the boss now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a reason why I look at a wolf pack, right? There's a
Right.
reason there's an alpha, and it can be supplanted if one of the betas ends up being stronger, and you want the stronger one in charge.
Exactly.
You want the one that's gonna be able to overpower.
That's
everything
why.
else
That's why
to win.
That's why people are able to overlook, going back to the moral thing with like voting for someone like Trump. They just don't consider it like, oh, I'm voting for the boss of the world hegemon empire that I'm part of. I want the biggest, baddest mofo in there. I don't care if he grabbed women by the pussy or whatever he did,
Right.
or I don't care. He's there
Right.
to be. I want my group to be the biggest, baddest people around, because that makes us the safest and the most, the greatest ability to secure resources for our survival.
Yes. Okay. Quick side note there, and then I want to get over to the
Sorry,
spirituality aspect.
we keep
No, this has been so much more than I could have ever hoped for. This is so good. So thank you again. This is fantastic. Back to the resources really quick. One of my conspiracy theories, one of the things that I float around in my head is we could go for a long time without depending on anybody else for resources, right? We've got so
For
much
most
stuff.
things.
For most things.
Almost everything.
Wouldn't you want to use everybody else's resources before yours?
Well, that's yeah.
I mean, that's
That's a
the
strategy,
point.
yeah.
That's that man. If
That's
I
also a
can
strategy.
take everybody else's stuff and save
And
mine
keep
in
yours.
reserves, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So that's what I think a lot of it is tied to as well. Okay, so on over to the spirituality aspect. Grow up Catholic. And what has that journey been like, and how has that shaped the way that you see the world?
Yeah. Can I touch real quick back on the women in the military
Oh,
thing? 'Cause
please. Yeah.
I think
Let's put a button on it
something you didn't mention,
or a bow on it.
and something I think doesn't get mentioned a lot is like, because a lot of people, they focus on the individual differences between average man, average woman.
Yeah.
And there are absolutely some women who are physically and sometimes even psychologically stronger than individual men. There are absolutely women in the world like that we can pick out and find and be like, oh, you should go and drop them in. You should go be a war fighter because physically, psychologically, you can handle it.
Yep.
The other thing that, again, you didn't mention, I think does not get mentioned a lot, is the group cohesion, the group, the unit cohesion.
Yes.
That gets disrupted when you put the sexes together, when you mix the sexes. Everyone knows women amongst only women act different. You just need one man to go into that group and now they're acting different.
Yes.
Same with men among men. We're nasty, crude.
Yep.
You get one woman in there, watch us, depending on who she is, watch us compete, fight, even if none of that's involved, just the group dynamic changes.
Yes.
And that's something that I think is ultimately the primary reason why I personally don't think women should be in frontline combat scenarios. I think they can and should serve in the military and other capacities. The other thing is, again, going back to as a civilization, women are your breeders. Men are biologically disposable.
Yes.
Which doesn't feel good, but we are.
No, but we are.
We are. We do the hardest, dirtiest, most dangerous work, and we're the ones who do the overwhelming majority of the fighting historically because we are biologically disposable. You can lose half of your men in a war if you keep your women. Hey, happy guys for one generation.
Absolutely. Pick of the litter.
They are the determining factor to your population growth, civilization, survival, all this stuff we've been talking about. It's all tied in. Women are your breeders. Men are biologically disposable. Women are not. And that also draws to a lot of the differences in the behavior that society has towards men and women, and the differences that men and women have in their behavior is due to that. So those are other reasons why the unit cohesion, I think, is compromised and weakened when you have the sexes mixed in a fighting unit like that. And I think that's the primary and best argument against it.
I'm so glad you brought that
not
up.
Even the average differences between men and women. Like yes, those are there, but like
and there's gray areas there and all that. But yes, everything changes as soon as you add in the opposite sex to a scenario.
And America is spoiled and privileged that we haven't even the Civil War, we have never fought an existential survival war.
No.
Soviet Union lost 20 million people in World War II. We have not lost that in all of our wars for all of our history.
We haven't even touched it.
And the Soviet Union lost that in one war.
Yep.
And so that just puts into perspective, and they're only a country of, they don't have as much population as the Soviet Union at that time and Russia today. I think the great gigantic Soviet Union, which people think, having all these people, yes, they do, but that's a European nation, a European small nation state perspective of Russia.
Right.
We have over twice the population of Russia today. Yeah. The Soviet Union at the time, I think, had, again, with when they controlled a lot more land,
right?
Because they, again, were an empire.
Yeah.
And took over land. They had, I think it was like 120 million people. Yeah. And they lost like a fifth or whatever the math works out. They lost that civilians and combat.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was World War II, and then you had Stalin after that, and all the
political purges. You had World War I, not 20 years before that.
Yeah, they lost it.
World War I. Then you had the Russian Civil War in between that. Yeah. The early 1900s, it was not. You did not want to be an average Russian.
No,
that was very bad for your survival rate.
No, well, and Russia's that's a different stock of people.
Oh yeah,
hardy and they are very tied to their identity of being Russian.
Yeah, and so for an example, to this day, like the Soviet Union famously used women in certain combat roles. They did not form infantry battalions of riflemen to send women in a frontal assault, but they had snipers, they had mortarmen, they had anti-aircraft gunners, and they served their role. And they had pilots, they had many famous women who contributed to their victory in that war, and that's great for them.
Yes.
But they were also in an existential, literal life or death fight, and where they lost entire generations of men. And there's still a population difference between their men and women that you can see today in Russia. It's mostly evened out, but you can still see it among the older population, particularly. And so if you are in a fight like that, which does happen on occasion throughout history, again, we have a lot of people they don't have historical, civilizational, human development perspectives on these things. And so when you're saying we're going to send our breeders to go be bullet sponges, that's just generally to go die. We're gonna send the people if we're concerned about our birth rates,
bullet sponges,
particularly when we have a birth rate issue. You don't want to send the limiting factor to your breeding to go be chewed up as frontline combat soldiers.
Of course.
So I think those two reasons are the two main reasons why.
Yeah, that's a great point.
In my opinion.
Gosh,
I think those are good arguments.
I wish he had said that.
I've almost never heard them from anyone. I don't know why.
No, well, and that's what Pete should have said during the Senate hearings for his confirmation.
Was it just like men stronger or something like that?
Well,
something crude.
Yeah, I don't know.
He doesn't strike me as that great of an intellectual, despite being an officer and having a college education that I don't. But
yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Anyways,
it's going to be interesting. But
so religion.
I
just wanted to touch on that because
I'm so glad you brought that you put that bow on there, because that is such a good point and so true. Well, and what I love about this is, this is episode number 3 for me, and so I'm going to end up talking to people of all stripes, all religions, all political views, all historical, all the things, and I really appreciate the deep honesty and openness in this conversation. Because all those points are all so good. And one of the things, have you ever seen like any of the people on the streets interviews where, how many states are there in the US?
Oh yeah.
And people have no freaking idea,
idiots,
right?
Man.
And it's like, and people can't conceptualize a lot of the things that we've talked about. And hopefully this clarifies a lot of those points, because like, how much do you love your wife?
More than anyone else in the world.
Yeah. Appreciation for men, for women, for the way that life. I mean, like,
I love women; they're beautiful.
Yeah, and so I
do so many great things for us.
What drives me crazy is I think that there ends up being the patriarchy and men versus women and all. No, if anything, the amount of respect and love that I have for women is what makes me have this view of things, and so I love that that's the last point on that you made, because why would you ever send the thing that you love the most into a situation where it's going to get them killed? And then as you extrapolate that out, why for our country would you ever put those people in harm's way?
Particularly now when we have birth rate problems.
Right. When
we were having 7 kids a woman in 1910, wasn't so much an issue.
Right.
That would actually be a more appropriate time to put women in frontline combat than now.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Oh, it's so weird
But we also had more than enough men, so it wasn't.
Right. Yep.
We didn't even need, was this? So anyways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, long story short, my disillusionment with society, I saw all these social changes that I thought were different, and I realized my lifestyle and the ideology of the Marine Corps, and particularly the infantry, was diametrically opposed to everything that our country was doing.
Yep.
Freedom, individualism, liberalism, completely opposite. Marine Corps, you're a collective, you're a unit, you're a Marine, you're harsh, you have to do hard things. You're not an individual. We're bad guys, we go do bad guy stuff.
Yeah.
Because we think it's good because we want to be the winners.
Right.
It's bad to be on the receiving end of other bad guys.
Of course.
So
yeah,
that led me to start questioning things and just ask questions and seek understanding. So with religion, growing up Catholic provided a lot of structure. Like I was saying, my grandparents were so religious that they literally had a shrine to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, a physical shrine that they would occasionally pray to and leave offerings on, and that's very Catholic. It's not very Protestant.
Right? Yeah, it's very Catholic.
It's very
yeah. But the Protestants
hold over pagan
Protestants
practices. Yeah, that's not Bible based. That's very. We need to convert these pagan Europeans. We're going to let them.
Yeah, have some idols.
Have their fertility goddess and their virginity goddess and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So that's very rare for Western Christians to be that religious. Most Western Christians, again, like you asked me, was I a Christmas, Easter Christian. Did I even go to church? I mean, how
Yeah.
many Christians don't ever go to church
Oh, a fair number of
in
them.
the West, at least?
Right.
And so I think there's a big difference. Just to clarify, Western Catholic touched Western European, North American experience of Christianity versus what's going on in the East.
Yes.
Russia, Greece, Eastern Mediterranean, that Christianity, there's clearly been the way that they practice their religions and the way that they live their lifestyles has radically departed from each other.
Yes. I did a deal one time for a Armenian church. And it was so wild to see the difference between, I think you'd consider that more Orthodox Christianity.
I believe they are Orthodox.
Roman Catholicism versus Protestantism. And then you get into the subdivision within each of those. And, I think most Protestants, you look at something like, oh, I've been saved. And then some of them go to church regularly. Some of them don't. Some of them read their scriptures regularly. Some of them don't. I ran into a fair amount of Catholics, especially Latino Catholics, that are Christmas, Easter Catholics. They are Catholic because their family's Catholic. They were baptized Catholic.
It's your
but beyond
identity.
that, right? But beyond that, they aren't actually weekly practicing Catholics.
Right.
Yeah.
So my family was, and it
Yeah.
wasn't a choice. It wasn't like,
No, you are.
Oh, dad. Dad moans and, sometimes I give in and go to church. No, like you go to church because we're Catholic and that's it. That's the law.
What's your ancestry, by the way?
So I'm pretty standard Germanic, Celtic, North American, but on my mom's side, she's half Polish.
Okay.
So I know I have a little bit of an Eastern look. And I've gotten, particularly here, where here the American stock here is very Anglo. It was like
Very.
where I grew up on the East Coast, you got the Italians, the Poles, you got
Right.
it's smorgasbord. You're
Yeah.
just white, and no one cared to question or bother or ask or care. But here, I have personally been told by many people that I'm a foreigner, or they don't believe that I was in the military because it's so Anglo-British stock
so,
here.
I know. I've
which
had
I don't-
people say,
which doesn't
are you
bother me.
Ukrainian? And I'm like, okay, I know I got the strong bridge and the strong brow. I maybe.
I have literally been called Yugoslavia. Like but there's some old guy. He wasn't that old. He was like middle aged, maybe 10 or 15 years older than me. But he was as a joke, he was calling me Yugoslavia because he thought that's like where I was from.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I get it. Like, especially when I have a tan, I can tan. Like my wife thought I was Greek when she first met me.
Yeah. Okay.
And
yeah.
so I probably got some Tatar in that Polish wood pile
Yeah.
somewhere. Some a little. I'm like I'm not quite like white. Like
I
I've
get
got the tiniest little bit
translucent.
of like olive in me. You know. So some Tatar
Well,
or something.
good stuff,
But
because you
anyways,
are very handsome.
Thank you. I
Lucas.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
So growing
and-
up, it
and-
wasn't
and
an
it's-
option. You're going to church.
Right.
Did you go to seminary?
No, but I did want to be a priest when I was younger.
Okay. Yep.
And it's just funny. Back to the phenotypes. I look like the men on my mom's side of the family. Both my brothers, they look identical to the men on my dad's side of the family.
And where are you at birth order?
I'm the middle.
You're in the middle. Okay.
I have half jokingly asked my parents if they sure I wasn't swapped at the hospital or something. Like, am I actually the child of you two? Because everybody looks this way and I'm the odd one out.
You're the odd one.
But I look just like the men on my mom's side of the family. I don't think there's any funny business going on. So it's so interesting also how genes work. Like certain ones get expressed and certain ones don't.
Oh,
And
yeah. You
it's
just look at my 4 kids and it's very, for sure.
So,
And at that
and I
point,
went to CCD. Like I did this. So that was like the Monday. It was like the Sunday, but on Monday school.
Yeah.
After school. So I had the full Catholic upbringing. I had my first communion, and that was a big deal. It wasn't like, oh, you just do it. We're just going through the motions.
No, it was,
we're like kind of Christian. Like we're into it, man.
Yeah.
It's everything. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I had my confirmation again. Big deal. I took that so seriously. My confirmation saint was Saint Michael because I was like, I was looking for a heroic
Oh, and
story.
same.
And I was like, oh, he's a badass. He has his flaming sword. He killed all
Hell
these demons.
yeah.
He killed all these demons.
Yeah.
He sent the devil. You know,
You
that's badass.
you picked the right one.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was very,
very Marine
Lucas.
of you.
Yes, and he's also he's the patron saint of like the military in general.
Yeah.
Military combat fighting warriors.
Yeah.
So, and I was 13. I didn't know I was going to join the military when I was 13 years old.
Right.
But that's just kind of
But
how
that
my
is
mindset and my interests were aligned. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very Lucas, and that's
Very
why
Lucas.
I chose it. I didn't pick a saint because he was nice and saved all these people and like did all this charity work.
Yeah.
No, I want the warrior.
You want the badass.
I want the soldier. And so
Yeah.
it's just kind of funny how things work out like that.
Yeah.
And so I was deeply Catholic. I never questioned it deeply, but when I was a young child, because young children, humans go through this phase where they get socialized and indoctrinated with state ideology wherever they live, and then they have these preconceived notions. But I was, when I was before I was fully indoctrinated with the things I became indoctrinated with, and again being extremely literal, coming from a family with no personality, very strict, stuffy people, and being just having a natural mind for looking at systems. I remember hearing a sermon when I was like 5 or 7, and the priest said something about something from the Old Testament, Jesus, God's chosen people, blah blah blah. So I literally turned to my dad and I asked him, I said, Dad, if Jews are God's chosen people, what are we doing being Catholic?
Oh yeah.
Like what? Like we should, if we believe in God, if we believe in God and we think He's great and we think this is the Word of God, and if the Bible and this priest is telling me that Jews are God's chosen people, why am I Catholic? Let's go be Jewish.
Yeah.
That's just a very logical thing to ask. This is a message you receive, and then when you have these preconceived notions that what he's saying is true, and this is the Word of God, and we believe in God, and we want to serve God. We want to be good Catholics. We want to serve God.
Yeah.
Why are we being Catholic? So
do you remember what the response was?
He didn't answer me.
Oh, I was going to say your dad's
did not give me any response at all. It literally in church.
What the
it was
hell,
hushed.
Lucas? Yeah.
Are you familiar with how Catholic Mass works?
No, honestly, I've always wanted to go to Mass.
I haven't gone to it myself. I've driven past. There's a pretty Catholic church here, and again, I'm not
It's
practicing.
so beautiful.
So I
The
thought
grounds are
of
amazing.
going just to go see it.
Yeah.
Once. It's whatever.
Yeah.
It's an hour of my day. It's not a big deal.
No.
But it'd be nice to see a pretty building and
it
maybe have a
really
little bit
is.
of nostalgia, even if I'm not believing. Whatever.
Of course.
And so my parents had no response for that.
Yeah.
So Catholic Mass is very all the stereotypes about it true. It's very strict. It's very organized. Everyone stands at the same time. Everyone says the same things at the same time. Everyone sings the same song at the same time.
Yep.
I have gone to a Pentecostal church.
Oh,
And
different experience.
Dude, I was genuinely scared. and I'm not meaning to be offensive. Like if you're Protestant or Pentecostal, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And if your experience with Christianity is very stuffy, like very on the conservative end of Catholics.
Oh yeah.
And
Very
then-
reverent. The word I think of is reverent.
extremely reverent. And then these Pentecostals, they were because it was chaotic. My experience with Christianity and church is if it's very organized.
Yes.
It's the Roman Catholic Church,
yeah.
Roman state, still leftovers. We need order, we need hierarchy.
Yes.
You are the layperson, then there's priest, then there's the Pope, then there's God. And so I had all of these hierarchical. I am child. There's parent. There's grandparent.
Yes.
I had all this hierarchy and in my life, and when I saw people on their own, individually, uncoordinatedly, dancing and singing and then speaking in tongues, I just didn't know. I looked all this stuff up afterwards because I didn't know there's some Pentecostals that speak in tongues, and that freaked because they were trying to bring me in. I was invited by a friend at the time, and so they're trying to bring me in.
Yeah, you'll have a great time.
So the priest,
you'll
was
love
very,
it.
The pastor, whatever you call, he was like all like physically, he was putting his arm around me, being all friendly, and I was a grown man. I was in my mid to late 20s after the Marine Corps. I was genuinely scared because I was in such a strange social environment. I had no experience of, and I had no knowledge. If I had at least known, if some kind of warning, hey, if I had some kind of warning to at least know, rather than when I'm there in the moment, I'm like, holy crap, what's happening? And so
the Catholics are right. These people are crazy.
Yeah. So that was a
Yeah,
very that
that's
was a
an
very
awakening.
interesting experience.
Yeah. How old were you when you did that?
That like I said, I was like 26 or something.
yeah, okay.
It was it was a year or two before I met my wife,
Yeah.
and so maybe 25. But
Yeah.
that scared me, man, just because I didn't know what I was getting into.
Yeah,
and it was
yeah.
so different. But
Yeah. I've always wanted to go down to the South and go like to a black church.
oh man, they have such a good time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
They're so expressive.
Because like white people,
Too
they go
stuffy,
off and
man.
they're doing like weird, crazy things and
Yeah.
speaking in tongues and whatever. Man, black people are worshiping.
Yes.
And it is
There's a-
soulful. And it is and
Expression.
that like talk about two opposites of the Catholic strictness and reverence.
I've met a
and-
lot of African Catholics. There's not too many American Black Catholics,
No.
but I have
No,
met.
no,
I
no.
have growing
Yeah.
up on the East Coast. There were a fair few like immigrant
Yeah.
African Catholics
Yeah.
from like Nigeria or wherever.
Yeah.
But and so they weren't so much. But yeah, American Protestant Blacks, like they are worshiping. Like you said, they're
it's
the
so
emotional,
good.
and they get so much more out of it.
So much more out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Mormons are definitely far more on the Catholic side of things than they are on the Protestant side of things when it comes to you show up, everybody's in their pews, the pastor gets up, gives an opening message, everybody sings hymns out of a hymn book. It's some of them are solemn, but right, it's just everybody, there's that, and then there's the sacraments passed, but there's nobody getting up and dancing and going right. There's no. It's very uniform. It's reverent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what got me to start? There's another very, I think, insightful moment in my life when I was a child.
Yeah.
Again, being probably too literal, son of an engineer.
Yeah.
But very logical. Nothing wrong with this thought or this question, but Catholic doctrine believes in the doctrine of transubstantiation. Are you familiar with what that is?
No.
Okay, that is the Catholic doctrine states. It's not a belief. It is a statement of fact.
Yeah.
Hierarchy, Catholics,
Yes.
not Bible.
Yep, right. Yeah. There's that.
It states that the Eucharist
Yep.
is the literal body and blood of Jesus.
Yes. And that when it's blessed, it actually becomes.
Yes.
Yes.
It transubstantiates.
Yes.
The real flesh and blood of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So I was a good Catholic. I just wanted to be a good Catholic for my family because my family were good people.
Of course.
They had a roof over my head. Took me to go do the things I wanted to do.
You don't
I
want
was
to get kicked out of the tribe.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't want. That was my entire identity. So when Catholics say that, and then Catholics also believe. I say we. I'm not Catholic anymore.
Right.
They say Jesus is fully man and fully God.
Yep.
So if you are eating the literal flesh and blood of a man, I asked my grandmother one day, I said, Grandma, does that mean we're cannibals? Again,
That is the
in church,
logical conclusion.
and she was obviously deeply offended. And I, being the borderline autistic, overly literal, overly systems-based, not sociable son of an engineer, thought no problem in asking that.
No,
I had no concept it would
and there
offend someone.
shouldn't be. You should be able to ask that question.
I had no.
Did she make you go in front of her altar and like say a couple Hail Marys, or how do you fix that?
No, I was very young. I was again around that age 5 or 7-ish, where I'm old enough to start thinking
like
critically,
conceptualizing, and
but I wasn't. Again, it was kind of in that stage before you're fully socialized and also indoctrinated, and so. Kids say a lot of things that adults would never say because they don't have this concept like, that might offend that person's
there's no filter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, she was just offended. She was like, "Oh, Lucas, no." Oh my God. And she had this. That was her reaction. We're in church. She's not gonna. I only got spanked in church once.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I got spanked literally in front of everybody once. But again, again, that's the fact that my family was willing to physically discipline me in a public space at the church that we go to every week. And when we went back to, we didn't stop going there or anything.
No, there was no embarrassment that kept,
I was the one who was embarrassed because I was the one getting spanked.
Of course.
And disciplined. And it wasn't even for anything that bad, which again, thought some of the stuff wasn't constructive or for a reason. But that's another point to understand the strictness. That's why other adults would tell my parents, "You are psychos spanking your child in church in front of everyone." I never saw anyone that happen to anyone else. So I'm not like deeply offended by that. I don't think I was abused for that or anything like that. But I understand that there's a difference.
Yes.
So
Well, and I think it's interesting from the environment that you are brought up in and used to. There's a lot of parallels between that strictness and what you had in the military.
I was seeking structure and
Of course.
hierarchy and strictness.
Yes.
I understood the positivity of it, and
Of course.
I wanted it for myself.
Yes. So when does how far would you say you're 100% good Catholic up until when, or is there always some kind of?
I can tell you, there's one.
Do you have like a distinct?
Yes, there's one very distinct instance where, I mean, there were a handful of times when I was like in a teenager where I was like, oh, you know, but it was very soft. It was more just like, I want to go home and play video games.
Of course.
And this church is stuffy, and there's not a huge emotion around it, and I come from a very stuffy family where our singing is very repressed. It's not a great emotional expression.
No.
And so I should have just joined the choir. I would have felt way better.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I was an altar boy, though. I was a proud altar boy.
Yes.
Because I thought for a time I wanted to be a priest.
Yeah.
But then I started to like girls, and I was like, and I'm Catholics. Man, I was like, man, I can't do it. I said one day I'm gonna sin if I become a priest.
Oh,
because
sure.
I'm attracted to women, and so I was like, so again, being like logical and consistent and honest, I was like, so I can't do that.
Yeah. No.
I didn't like.
I'm glad you saw that.
So
yeah, could you imagine the war you'd be having with yourself if you had gone down that path?
I would have sinned.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that would have made me a bad priest. So I shouldn't do that.
Right.
I shouldn't go down that path.
Yeah.
So I was home on leave one day. I was like 21, I think, 20 or 21. I was home on leave at my parents' house in Arizona. And it was Saturday. It was Saturday evening, and Catholics can go to church. I mean, you can go to church anytime, but
right.
Generally, most Catholics go on Saturday or Sunday to fulfill their weekly obligation. And church, Saturday had almost gone. It was late evening, and I asked my parents, I was like, "So when are we going to church tomorrow?" Because again, you're in the Houston family. It's not a choice.
Yeah,
it's not a choice.
Yeah,
never was even conceived of as a choice. And my parents just nonchalantly, they lean back and they say exactly like this, like, "Oh, we never believed in that crap. We just thought it was good for you kids."
What?
That is exactly how my dad said it. My strict disciplinarian father, that's exactly how he said it. Zero concept of offending anyone or hurting someone's emotional sensibilities. Just nonchalantly, "Oh, no, we never believed in that crap. We just thought it was good for you kids."
No way.
That's exactly how.
Did that just like, was there like a shattering of perception?
Left. I almost left that night. I almost left their house, and I almost disowned my parents for being not good Catholics, because that was my entire identity. Was you're American, you're Catholic first. You're Catholic first.
Yes.
Then you're an American.
Yes.
And then I had become a Marine. Those were the hierarchies.
Yes.
Those are my identities, and those are the
hills
hierarchies
that you will die on. First is religious, obviously.
Yes.
I mean, that's most people's first hill that they'll die on. And then it's the country you live in. And
your what you do for,
and then
how you secure your resources.
Yeah.
So,
gosh, my God, I'm in shock.
Yeah, that's a shocking thing to do. And so again, that's testament to why I have a lot of issues with my parents, because
to this day,
they've actually gotten worse in the past 2 years. I for a time, most of my adult life, I had what I would consider a very good relationship with them.
Yeah.
Until relatively recently, and we'll get to that. But one of the big things that I learned that my dad has never practiced is, and we're going back to like men, particularly intelligent, high achieving men, they have higher rates of sociopathy, which long story short, it doesn't mean you're some maniacally evil person. It just means you don't act or truly care about other people's emotions.
Right. Yes.
And if it's bad enough, you might be a psychopath. You may go murder people because you think it's
because
fun.
That's
like the far extreme end of the spectrum.
Yes.
The other end is like, I just don't care about offending people. Like I'm just a rude asshole, basically.
Right.
And so, but when you do that to your own son, and you're supposed to and you raise this person, and you're like, oh, we're supposed to be family, all this love, family values.
Yeah.
But I'll just defend your deepest, strongest sensibilities that I personally cultivated. You know what I'm saying? Like that.
Yes.
That's gonna offend somebody.
Hell yeah.
And humans are. I know there's engineers out there, but surprise, humans have emotions.
Can you repeat that for the engineers?
Yeah, humans are emotional beings.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
cool.
So,
got it. Yep.
So, yeah, that deeply offended me, and I almost disowned my own family for that.
Well, because there's two things there that pop up into mind for me. Is one, that's how your worldview is shaped, and obviously, so then that's there. But then part of how you stay in your tribe is doing the thing that they want you to do, and here your tribe is saying, "Oh, we actually only did that for you," and you're like, "Well, shit, I wouldn't have done it maybe in the first place anyway. So I was doing this for you."
Exactly. So then I became a radical Catholic.
Oh, you went even deeper.
So part of that was due to isolation, being in the Marine, like being deployed, being overseas.
Yeah.
And even when you're in garrison, when you're in the infantry, you're actually out in the field all week, running around in the woods, shooting guns or bang banging. If you don't have any blanks, you're literally saying bang bang. That's a real thing.
Bang bang, you're dead.
That's a real that's literally if
so
we didn't have live rounds or blanks, that's what we. So
bang,
yeah, it was a great time.
That's so good.
Running around with real guns, like you're a kid, like playing with toy guns, but
with real ones.
real,
Yeah.
And so it was great, and getting paid to do it.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah,
young men love it.
Every 5-6-year-old's dream.
Yeah, why would a young man not want to go do that?
I can't think of it unless there's women involved. I would choose the women, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, I was single. I guess you could call me a late bloomer. You could say.
Okay.
I took girls to dances and stuff. My mother was deeply offended. My dad let me take 2 girls to one of the. It wasn't homecoming. It was one of the high school Navy. It was the Navy ball for my high school JROTC program. I took 2 girls.
Oh.
And I was honest. I asked one girl out. I asked one girl out, and then I went to another girl and I said, "Hey, I already have a date to the ball, but do you want to be my second date?"
That is the most baller move
also,
ever.
before I asked her, I asked the first girl, like, "Hey, do you care if I invite someone else too?"
Oh my gosh.
If I invite another girl, I made sure she knew I was going to invite another girl.
Yeah.
And I got them both corsets.
Oh.
Not corsets.
That is
corsage. The thing on the flower on the wrist.
That's so smooth.
And I remember my parents argued in front of me. My mom was like, "Oh, I can't believe you're letting him do this," and that was a proud moment for my dad.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
And I was like, my son's taking 2 girls to the dance. Look at this, my strap. Look at the fruits of my labor. He was
very proud father.
Yes. So but again, being a good Catholic.
Oh yeah.
Being a good Catholic, fornication is a sin.
Yes.
So I was never had a problem getting female attention, but I chose not to
act on it.
Not to act on it all the way.
Yeah.
For a long time until I was 18 and in the Marine Corps, and I had different, again, my conditions changed. I had different social pressures.
Yep.
When I did that in the Marines, I came back a hero.
Oh, bro.
Lucas, a whole barracks room full of young guys.
Oh yeah. You are the hero.
You are the hero for a while because you got over that stage of your becoming a man. So
your development. Yep.
But anyways, so when my parents said that to me when I was in my early 20s, that deeply shocked me. And then again, being away from family, not having, we had friends in the Marine Corps, but it wasn't quite the same because you also work with, they're also your coworkers. It's a different dynamic.
For sure.
So religion was something that helped me, was something that helped fight the isolation, helped, all those positive social benefits of convening with a group of people to do a collective thing.
Yeah.
And then everybody feels better at the end.
Yeah.
I decided to, again, Catholic, we didn't read the Bible. We listened to our priests.
Yeah, well, of course.
So I decided, I was like, oh, well, I'm a Catholic. I should probably read this once all the way through.
Yeah.
And that was the killer.
That was the kill shot.
I read the Bible and I realized I'm not Jewish.
Yeah, yep.
And I'm not going to pretend to be Jewish or LARP as a Jew or something like that. And I took what the Bible said. I think an intelligent human sees some things are meant to be taken literally and some things are not. And I think if you're all one side or the other, that's just not a really smart way to look at what the Bible is.
Right.
And it's, it's part historical, part mythology, part moral lessons. So it's kind of a mix of things, right?
Yeah.
And so I could clearly see it came, like you were talking about with Mormons, I could clearly see it came from a certain group of people that I'm not. I understood I'm just not Jewish.
Right.
And it came from them, and the whole, like, the New Testament was basically evangelizing Judaism. It was opening it up. It was opening up the covenant of their God to the whole world.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know. It just didn't. It made me realize that it wasn't for me, essentially, is what I. And so again, so there's a time period, a transition period where I wasn't, it was my life habit. Every week go to church.
Of course.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's the identity.
There was a time where, and even the Catholic Church, when I was talking about like the social changes, the Catholic Church has, been liberalizing as well.
Yeah.
Even though the entire time I've been like post-Vatican II and everything, due to my age, that was a big thing that happened in my grandparents' time.
Yeah.
But seeing all these changes that I view as negative causes me to be like, oh, well, maybe this isn't so great because you're doing something that I disagree with.
Right.
So there was a time where I would literally go to church. I'd be sitting in church and the priest would be saying something that I think is like, I would literally say to myself, I don't agree with that.
Yep.
I don't agree with that. And the message of Jesus, like love everybody, all that stuff, I was like, no, I literally don't agree with that. I think I want to be in the group of strong guys that we take what we want because we're strong guys.
Yeah. Which is very
diametrically opposed to the message of Jesus.
Yes.
And so I was like, that made me, that was a contradiction within myself, within my identity and within my identity.
Well, and then you have to make a decision.
Exactly. Because I wasn't basically being system and being like on some level too honest. Was like, okay, I have to solve this problem. I wasn't one of those people that were just like, oh, like I feel like most people just don't think that hard about these things. They just don't ever get to that point where they're like, oh, there's a contradiction here. I have to solve this. They're just like, no, I'm gonna keep being Catholic because that's my social group, that's my identity, that's my family. Like, why would you even question that? Like, it doesn't matter.
And I'll just suppress this question. I'll just go get along together.
Like, no, this is a problem. It has to be solved.
Yes.
Engineer. There's a problem with this function. This system has to be solved.
Yeah.
So there was a time where I didn't know how to solve it yet. And so I'd be in church, be in mass, listening to priests literally saying to myself, don't agree with this. And I thought of myself as a Saint Michael, the Archangel cultist. I was like, I'm a heretic to the Catholic Church. I think the Catholic Church has deviated from something I think it should be. And I am here to praise and worship and receive blessings from Saint Michael the Archangel because he's a badass.
Yeah.
And I like what he did. And I don't really care so much for what the church and what this priest is saying. But I like this guy. And so I literally, and it sounds like kind of weird to say that about yourself, but again, just like from a logical standpoint, that's, I was like, I'm a heretic and I'm a Saint Michael the Archangel cultist, but I'm here in church and mass because I think I'm supposed to go to mass. But this is all I have.
Well, so it's not even just all you have, it's all you know.
Right. It's all I know, it's all I have. So
so much of what I think of religion is answering the question of why we're here and where we're going. And for so many people, that's, I am sinful. There's something wrong with me. I need somebody to save me. Here's the savior, right? And that wasn't anything that you just said. Was that a part of the equation of trying to figure out, okay, wait. I had this answered, but I also don't agree with these other pieces, but that's still a damn important piece of the equation, isn't it?
Yes, that is. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I completely glossed over that. For everyone listening, I went out drinking last night and I feel pretty good. I didn't go too crazy, but I had a good time. And so my brain is failing to recall every single memory. But yeah, that happened when I was a teenager. I was a serious Catholic. I was trying to be a good Catholic. I was trying to fit into the system.
Yes.
I realized I'm part of a system and I want to fit into it because that will benefit me. And I very, very deeply internalized all of the, everyone's a sinner, you're bad, there's something wrong with you, you need salvation.
Right. And Catholicism is original sin based.
Right.
Right.
So you have original sin. You need
that's
to be
why you have to
fixed.
be baptized as an infant, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Otherwise,
because if you die, then you're going to hell.
Going to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Catholics believe.
Yeah.
They're
that one's
they're-
always blown me away.
yeah, you better have the priest in the wherever you're giving birth to bless that child in case something happens.
Yeah. Could you imagine? I mean, having 4 children now, when I held them when they were a day old, 6 months old, a year old, if somebody had come up to me and seriously said, if you don't baptize that baby and it dies, it's going to hell, I would have
It's going to be tortured for eternity.
knocked that person out.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Good
more
man.
ridiculous than that thought process. But
Right. And I had deeply, deeply internalized that and turned the other cheek
yes.
and all of that it's a victim ideology. Like I said earlier, that part of Christianity it's a slave mindset.
Yes.
It's a mindset for slaves, for people who are on the absolute bottom rung, who have a terrible life, who are victimized by others.
Yep.
And you think that, well, you're going to be pious, you're going to have this belief, and then in the afterlife, there's going to be the savior that comes and rectifies the world, brings justice to the world. It's going to fix all these injustices.
Yep.
And then you're going to live in paradise, and your suffering is going to help you get there.
Yes.
Because you suffer more, you're going to be closer to God in that sense.
Yeah.
And so I had very, very deeply internalized that. And
Yes.
I understood as a boy that ideology made it impossible for me to compete in society. And I realized that it made it hard for me to get a girl. It made it hard for me to have friends. It made it hard for me to not be bullied. And I literally had this logical thought process in my mind. And I was like, I can't be this way, or I just won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
I will be a victim. I will be victimized by others who don't play by that rule set.
Yes.
And
So
they
this
don't
this
care.
is the thought process as a teenager.
As a teen 11-year-old, 12-year-old getting bullied.
Yeah.
And I'm like, literally getting hit, not hitting back.
Oh yeah.
And
Turn
like,
the other cheek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
Yes, it does.
You're a good Catholic. You better do it.
Absolutely.
So I was like, I just can't do this in the society I live in. I will be crushed.
yes.
I will be absolutely destroyed if I do this.
Yeah.
So I realized that I couldn't do that. And so I kind of was like, okay, well, that's maybe like an ideal if everyone plays by that rule book.
Right.
Like, oh, we can all be super nice to each other, basically. Super nice, always erring on the cooperative side. If a man steals from you, give the cloak off your back instead of, in addition to what he already stole from you.
Right.
All that.
Yeah.
We can be
Yeah.
super mega cooperative and never on the self-interested side.
Right.
But we live a limited lifespan in a world of limited resources.
Yes.
So there's a
So-
contradiction there.
Right. How do you, there again is an equation that isn't adding up.
Right. So I learned that the hard way as basically getting bullied and not able to get a girl as a teenager, as a young teenager. My late teenager years, I was transitioning away from that. And again, I took 2 girls to one dance.
Yeah.
How many guys can say they did that?
All right. I was going to say, yeah. Notch on the belt.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's a good one.
anyways.
So
that was a big part of it. But
Yeah.
when I was a young child, I remember just it was so terrible. It was so terrible. And that's why I personally do have and I suffered as a result. I was, like I said, bullied, and I think I was victimized more because I had deeply internalized and acted on that belief set. I think that it's so because I feel like it doesn't serve people's genuine interests. I don't think that ideology actually helps people in the real world. I think it hurts people. So I think that it's a bad thing to teach that to people.
Yes. Well, and engineer brain, it is test. If something doesn't work, why isn't it working?
Right.
Make it work. And
You ask the
this
question.
ideology does not work
Exactly.
given the reality. And so you have those pieces, you have all these equations that are saying, yep, this piece doesn't make sense. Okay, but I want to still be a good Catholic. So how do I make the equation work?
That's the godly way to live, and we're all sinners.
Yeah.
And that's like an almost impossible ideal but we all you should be striving for that.
Of course.
So that was an easy way, and I think that's how most Christians kind of compartmentalize that.
Yeah. Yeah, mine within Mormonism was, okay, if I can't make this work now, there's kind of a concept of like, God hasn't revealed all truths yet, right? I would think that's kind of a papal thing too, where, okay, well, the Pope might get inspiration of what the new direction is or something.
When God decides to talk to humanity, he tells the Pope. So the Pope can be, and then the Pope tells us something. When the Pope tells us something new, that's the process of how that happened. Like God decided to tell the Pope something, and
and so we have Mormonism has a prophet, and so same thing. That's the mouthpiece of God. And so when something needs to, we're going to be polygamist. Oh, by the way, we aren't doing that anymore.
That's interesting about Mormonism.
Oh yeah, I mean it's biblical, so why wouldn't have? Anyways, but that's a weird rabbit hole. But I would always, if I like reincarnation, I got to the point where I was like, I don't know how you learn everything that your soul needs to figure out in one 80-year lifespan, right?
I love philosophy.
If
smart guys wrote some stuff down so we can read it up and pick up that knowledge and I have to figure everything out over again.
For sure. But I was having this conversation with Rachel about what if one of the things that you need to figure out is humility,
right?
Well, you can figure out humility from that background of Catholicism, being born in Maryland, middle class family, all those things. But you're also going to get a way different experience in a lifetime where you are a king. You're also going to get a much different perspective of humility if you are a pauper. And so if there's some things that I need to learn and my soul's purpose is to learn and grow and become, then I don't think 180-year lifespan is going to do that. So I remember having those thoughts as a Mormon, deeply entrenched within Mormonism, and going, okay, well, that doesn't jive with Mormonism. So maybe it's just a truth that God hasn't revealed yet. So I'm just going to put that up here on the shelf. And we're going to revisit this later, but I'm still going to stay a good Mormon.
Easy way to compartmentalize it.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm a fallible human and I just don't understand. I don't understand God's word or his will because
his way is above me.
I'm just a little human.
Yes. Yeah. That might be the most popular Protestant way of answering a lot of their questions is, just God's ways are above mine.
Sometimes
I can't understand it with my
So the ones we do understand, we have to go drive full forward. This is the word of God. We must get this done. But anything you don't understand, God works. God works in mysterious ways. Isn't that great? I promise you'll get this reward after you die. Good. After you're dead, that's when you get a reward. You better listen to me. I promise you.
Promise.
Sales, it's like, bro, you don't actually ever get the thing. You don't actually ever get the thing. And that was another, I didn't kind of discover that till later, but that was another logical thought process. Like, I promise you, like when you break through all the messaging, there's this religion that's promising you benefits if you live this way, believe these things after you die. There's not a benefit for your actual lifetime.
Right. Unless he just happens to decide to bless you in your lifetime.
Right.
Well, and then
I think that originally the original Christians, they thought that Jesus was going to come back in their lifetimes.
Yes.
So like, we got to do this right now.
Yeah.
That's the urgency. Your roof is leaking right now. You literally need it. When your house is your drywall and plywood house is literally disintegrating as it's raining right now. You need to buy now.
Yes.
Jesus is coming back in our lifetimes. We have to do this now.
Yeah. I mean, it's a damn good sell strategy.
It is. That's some urgency.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah.
The world's ending. God's coming back to rapture. If you don't believe this, you're going to suffer an eternal torment.
Is the rapture Catholic? Is that a Catholic?
I don't know.
Teaching? The rapture's always blown me away.
The Catholics definitely have the idea that Jesus will come back. I believe they call it the rapture as part of like the Revelation story and the end of the world and everything. Jesus will come back, save all the sinners, smite all the wrongdoers, save all the sinners, and then we'll all go to heaven, and the world will in some capacity like end, but we're all in heaven now. So like,
okay,
it's all good. It's okay that the world ends because we're all in heaven.
There's a book series called the Tribulation series. Left Behind series. Same difference. And that one's like, right, all of a sudden just poof, half the people are gone, right? The pilot in that airplane gone, crashes. Although I've always thought that was kind of an interesting concept, but I'm totally getting us off track.
Rough. God's will, huh? Saves the pilot, and then can't pilot the airplane, then
damns everybody else. Seems like a really heavenly, loving.
Those guys must not have been good Christians.
Good God. Okay, so you have that through your teens, and then into your 20s, find out that your parents really were just doing it for you guys.
Which
Then
on some level, I think it was good.
Oh, well,
on some
and
level.
that's the hardest thing that
They
Rachel
weren't-
and I've had to answer is we grew up with this as our framework. How do we raise our kids outside of this framework? Because we haven't been here before. So I get that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I am a student of history, and literally, like, I'm taking a history class right now.
Oh,
for college.
cool. Oh.
Also, just engineer brain. Sorry.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively, I've read a lot of stuff, and I'm doing Western civilization before the 30 Years' War right now, and right now we're going to the ancient Greeks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Early in the semester.
Yeah.
And from what I've been reading, they did not really derive morality from their religion, and their gods were very flawed.
Yes.
Like Zeus, for example, has raped women.
Yes.
Like many women.
Yes.
They're not fidel. Like they practice infidelity. They do terrible things. They're very human.
Yes.
And so they didn't really derive. They didn't look to their religion as how do I behave? How am I supposed to act toward other people?
Yeah.
They had philosophy and politics for that. They asked that question themselves for themselves, and their religion was more ritualistic, and they still had laws. Like Socrates was famously, one of the charges laid against him for why he was executed was like disrespecting the gods or something like that, being impiety.
Yeah.
But their impiety was disrespect. So that their religion was a lot more ritualistic.
Yeah.
And again, this is my understanding. Could be wrong. But
Right.
this is the information.
Yeah,
this is my
the way that
understanding.
you're getting it.
But they did deeply. At least the state made everybody practice that their survival, their ability to thrive and be a civilization and have lots of kids, have healthy kids, have good harvests, win in war, make intelligent business decisions, all of that stuff. That the success of that was very critical on them performing their rites and religion accurately and piously, and then receiving the great
associated.
receiving the gifts from their gods because they showed their piety to the gods. They were deeply religious in that aspect, but they did not look to Zeus to be like, I need to behave like Zeus because he raped all these women.
Yeah.
That's not.
So that's a really quick, interesting tie in there. Jordan Peterson was just on with Huberman, and he makes the point in there that a lot of the polytheistic religions roll up at some point to become monotheistic.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, that's how we develop as humans. We have poly personalities, right? We've got our angry side, our warring side. We have our loving side. We have all these things. So what do each of the gods represent? Those represent one of our ego states.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, as we develop as humans, you're supposed to end up with an overarching ego that knows how to utilize each of the ego states. And so, do you always want to be in that Aries, Mars, warring, angry, fighting state?
If you're a Marine.
If you're a Marine. But when you need to utilize it, you need that thing. And so you have I'm always fascinated by if you had Napoleon go up against Caesar versus all these things, and Vikings, right? Infamously would go into a berserker rage, took mescaline and some other substances to be able to strictly channel their rage, Aries self. And cool, you're completely in that state, but that reduces logic, that reduces strategy, that reduces so many other things that if you still had that overarching ego that was able to, yes, utilize the rage, but in context, you're going to be way better off than if you're strictly in that state.
Right. For most of it, until the decline, of course, the Roman essentially discipline of their and lack of emotion of their warriors in the actual heat of combat versus they defeated all these savage barbarians that the Romans themselves admitted were bigger and stronger and more capable, fierce individual soldiers. But we, with our discipline and our strategy, are able to conquer them and defeat them on the field of battle because the way we coordinate and cooperate is superior to them
Right.
fighting as a mass of even sometimes superior individuals.
Yes. Well, and you
that are
still
not
have
coordinated.
warriors. They just aren't strictly warriors.
Right.
And they're disciplined.
And what I love about Rome, I love Rome.
Love Rome.
The Roman ruling class, they were the majority. Of course, Rome went through several stages and it eventually turned into a degenerate late stage empire and collapsed.
Yep.
And no one at the time was that sad about it. Well, a lot of people knew it was coming for a long time.
Well, because they had become degenerate.
Right. They became degenerate. They lost the spirits that motivated them. They lost their soldier class. Their elite class became disconnected from the people. They were no longer Roman aristocrats. They were just random rich people and who, it degenerated into an oligarchy. A normal cycle of civilization that,
of course,
that happens.
Which we are.
Yes. We're not as strong as we were in 91.
Right.
Just fact.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors to that. You can say it's good, bad, whatever, but that's a fact.
It's a fact.
So for a time period, like I was talking about, why there's so much political disassociation and problems in the West right now is because the majority of people, whatever you think of yourself politically, the majority of people don't like what the elite class are doing, or enough people that it's causing social unrest,
right?
Because they're still voting for them. So are the majority of people really that wrong? They're still, they're still
right.
So
and one man's what is it? One man's freedom fighter is the other man's terrorist.
Exactly.
Some people love Elon. Some people love George Soros. Some
people very much do love George Soros.
Your oligarch.
Exactly.
That's all you're doing in the end.
So I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I am, unfortunately. Like I was saying, I think the ruling class in our country no longer see the United States where you and I as normal people actually have to live and interact with people and deal with the consequences of social changes that the mega billionaires don't, because their wealth insulates them from all society to such a degree that they literally don't care because it doesn't affect them.
Yep.
They don't see us as a good investment anymore. And so they're not doing things to our benefit. Whereas in times past in the United States, or like I was bringing up with Rome, where like a lot of times you couldn't be a successful Roman senator if you were outside of a very, very tight-knit elite patrician bloodline that literally goes back to the ancient kings of Rome and before.
Right.
Unless you were also a successful military commander.
Yes.
And Rome was an empire, and they were very proud of that, very happy to be one. And they got their wealth and dominance from taking other people's stuff. From being the baddest dudes around and strongest dudes around there. And so when their political class, when their state ideology and their ruling class is aligned with their actions, and in some ways you have to make the people rewarded. If they are conscious of their own slavery and that they are only pawns to be exhausted for an elite benefit, there will eventually be
revolt,
or at the very least they'll stop trying.
Yes.
The people will just do the absolute bare minimum to get by, all this quiet quitting stuff. That's no different from a farmer planting fewer crops, or a peasant farmer. If he's not directly being watched, he's going to work way slower.
Of course.
If the squire isn't right over his shoulder, he's going to work way slower. Oh, he's on the other side of the hill, he can't see me. That type of thing. At the very least, your worker bees will stop being as efficient.
Yes.
And your soldiers will stop fighting as hard.
Yep.
And stop being as brave.
Yep.
And so there was a time period when civilizations do very well for themselves, there's always a high level of, when it's talking about group cohesion, there's a high level of cohesion between the ruling class, the state ideology, and the masses of people that make up the worker bees, the soldiers, and the professional class.
Right.
When there's a unity, they're able to do great, amazing things.
Well, and isn't it amazing how that to scale is always true?
Yeah.
I mean, back to talk about whatever organism, when there is cohesion amongst multiples of those things, whether it's 2 or 2 million, you're going to be able to reach your goal far, far better than the self-destruction that comes otherwise.
Right.
So we should probably have another 10, 20 minutes.
It's your podcast, man. I'm enjoying this conversation. We could talk all day about so many things, but
all day. And we're going to have to do this again.
Perfect.
Yeah. So this is definitely not the end. So if we miss something we want to talk about, you will be back. As long as you're willing.
So Are you okay if I go back to trying to kind of like leaving my religiosity?
That's exactly where I was going to go. I would love to know, because we have the kind of the tail end of Catholicism, but how did you get to where you're at today, and what is it today?
So yeah, I was a Saint Michael the Archangel cultist,
which is so kick-ass. If you're going to pick something, yes,
I would be kneeling in the pew praying to Saint Michael the Archangel.
Yes,
that he gives me strength to be a good Marine.
It's so good.
I didn't care about Jesus at that point.
Okay,
I was like,
yeah,
I'm not interested in your message. So
yeah,
I read the Bible. I actually didn't finish it. The Old Testament just turned me off. I'm like, if this is like the foundation of everything else, then that's just not for me.
Then the fruits from that foundation can't be worthwhile.
And I read a fair bit. I skimmed most of the books.
Yeah,
I got maybe halfway through. I would start the book, kind of skim it, and then go through. Once I kind of felt like I got the gist of it and the gist of that message, because again, it's different. Some things are just like straight up commandments, like you do this or that. Some things are just like historical background, like on the Old Testament. There's like, oh my god, so how many pages of just like ancestry?
Oh, it's so.
And I was sitting there. I was like, why am I reading this? I'm skipping this. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. How many pages?
This person begot this person begot this person.
Okay. Like, I don't need to read all that.
Why is this sacred text? I don't care.
And I'm not descended from any of those people biologically, like literally biologically. I understand if I was, why I would be. I think if I was Jewish, I would be a very pious Jew.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I could see that.
And I understand why those who are, but I'm not. So, and I just don't. That message of evangelizing someone else's religious favor, which is how I view like the religious development of Christianity from out of Judaism. That's how I view it. I don't need this guy's favor. Again, I don't have once you don't think there's something inherently wrong with you, once you break from, there's not something, I wasn't born with this problem of original sin. When I don't feel that, then I don't need your favor. I don't need to do what you say then.
Yeah.
And so then
once
it all just falls apart.
That mentality can shift to that piece. A whole different world is available.
So then like I said, I started looking into a lot of, you asked me my ancestry earlier. It's all from Europe.
Yeah.
Smorgasbord, Amerimut, all from Europe.
Yep.
And so I started looking into, I would never have guessed otherwise. I started looking into pre-Christian, actual like European religion.
Yep.
And obviously, like Western Christianity is indelibly meshed with Western civilization and European culture today. But there was a time where it wasn't.
Right.
And even among Catholicism, I mean, there's a lot of Catholic content in their religion that's not in the Bible, that was never preached by Jesus, and it's all leftover like Roman state religion.
Just
essentially leftover paganism.
Look at the major holidays.
Yeah.
What's Christmas? What's Easter?
Yeah.
They're all pagan holidays that you co-opted.
And so like the Protestants are correct when they say all this stuff these Catholics are doing is not Christian. It's not from the Bible. It wasn't the word of Jesus. That is all something else, at least.
Yes.
And Rome is in Rome, in Europe. I realized all that stuff, Roman state religion.
Yeah.
They, that's all old European content. And,
right.
And the Protestants are correct. These patron saints that get semi-deified, essentially deified and worshipped. Catholics don't believe that, but that's in practice. Looking from the outside in, that's essentially
what it is.
You're basically worshiping the saint.
Yeah.
He's just a local god for your town.
Yes.
He's just because they had these pantheons of gods.
Right.
The pagans, they had these pantheons of gods, and so they'd have these like their main pantheon, but then like your town might have a god, or you might have a household god, like the because a lot of them had small altars in their homes and their domiciles.
Yeah,
you have like the main Roman god, and then you have like Jupiter, Saturn, whoever you want to worship,
right?
And then you also have when they became an empire, you also have the emperor who gets deified.
He gets a spot.
Yeah.
Why not?
Of
course.
The emperor is also God. You have your God emperor.
Yeah.
Who you can touch and feel and throw a stone at if you want. And
probably didn't like the stone very much.
Yeah. And it reminds me when Bush got a shoe thrown at him.
That's so good. I love that video.
My neighbor was actually there. My neighbor was in the Secret Service.
That's wild.
And he was there and he saw that.
Well, he didn't do a very good job.
No. But
if you're letting somebody get a shoe over the podium to Bush,
I mean, anyone could just pull it off and,
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But that was kind of funny.
that was so good. Which is a major sign of disrespect.
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
obviously that wasn't just somebody like picking an object and throwing it. No, it was fuck this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And going back to the Middle East thing, you taught me about like the
Barter.
I never went to the Middle East. Yeah, like their bartering culture. I understand that like throwing a shoe at someone, hitting someone with like the bottom of your shoe is like a level of disrespect that Americans don't understand beyond the physical. Oh, someone's hitting you with something.
Yeah.
Beyond that, they don't. And
Well, I mean,
I do
even
understand
to the point
it.
where like I cross my legs a lot of the time. Me showing the bottom of my foot to you, this would be like majorly offensive, and I mean none of that. By the way,
Okay.
This is just more comfortable.
I
mean the utmost respect towards you.
My Western American brain didn't even.
There you go.
register
Yeah,
that.
if we were in, I don't
Didn't
know. I
care.
feel like that might be an Asian thing. I bet I could be wrong.
I'm sure somebody has that rule somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah. So like, and then you have like your household God that you personally pray to the most often in your house.
Yeah.
And so
because he's concerned with your household.
Yeah, and the patron saints are that. I mean,
Right,
from the
yeah.
outside in, that's
That's-
functionally they form the same. And again, I was looking at the way I think of things is their purpose is what they do. Again,
Yeah.
Screw the messaging. What are these patron saints? What is the role they're performing?
Yes.
The same role that these little local gods and goddesses did in pre-Christian time.
Right.
And so that started to kind of draw me back into Catholicism. Actually, I was like, oh, there's all this great content in Catholicism that I, as a 21st century American, missed out on. And I realized in Europe, or like you mentioned, a lot of the Mexican Catholics, they have a lot of content in their religious practice that North American and Western European Catholics don't. And the Western Europeans have an enormous amount of religious content for Catholics that Americans just do not have.
No. Yeah.
And so,
Well, we just simply don't have the history.
right.
Yeah.
And,
It couldn't have built up.
right. We don't have all these patron saints and all these. I mean, there are cathedrals in the United States.
Yeah.
There are some beautiful
Yeah,
cathedrals
back
and
east
old
there's
churches,
especially.
but not like Europe.
No.
Not like Europe. And
No.
and yeah, like you said, we don't have the history of like, oh, the town was founded when this priest came and like slayed all the pagans, and then he built this thing. He did this thing, and now we have this church to him to honor him for this, and this is our 800-year-old history of our town.
Oh, and by the way,
And
his skull's
there's-
over there in the corner.
Yeah, his skull. Yeah, we have his bones
Yeah.
buried in the church, and so there's all this continuity. And I feel like if I had that, it would have been a lot harder for me
sure.
to leave that and make a clean break with
Yeah.
that. And so as I started to learn, part of me kind of went back and forth, and so I had an emotional attachment. But again, in my real life, I couldn't really tap into that. I
Yeah.
understood it was there, and I think it's great, but I couldn't really tap into that because I live in America.
Right.
So, yeah, I just did a lot of reading of pre-Christian traditions, and I for a time I was kind of trying to practice some kind of paganism, you could say.
Yeah. What did that look like?
I performed. I read a lot of stuff on Asatru, which is like a modern reconstruction of Germanic religion.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, modern reconstruction, it's not we don't know exactly how people did things or what they
Right.
thought. And most of the sources that we do have were also written by Christians on the Germanic side of things.
Yeah.
Hellenic Roman stuff, we have a lot of original source material.
Right.
But for the Germanic peoples, we don't.
Well, so much of it was oral tradition versus something that we can tangibly get a hold of now.
I mean, there's stuff like there's rune stones.
Yeah.
There's rune stones. There's runic carvings. There is stuff.
Yeah.
But even a lot of the runic stuff, they were already at least nominally Christian.
Right.
And so there's not that much. There's some source material, but there's not.
It's
great
at
source
that
material.
point it had been more or less corrupted by.
It's impossible to know. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's impossible to say concretely, like the Catholic Church does. We are the Word of God. You know,
Right.
so authoritatively, if you're being honest.
Right.
And so that I perform rituals. There's actually there's some people who do it
Yeah.
scattered around the Western world, And
is this like tied into like Samhain and the solstices and equinoxes and
often is a lot of the pre-Christian religion, weather was a lot more impactful to people when this harvest is going to mean your life or death. For the next, if this harvest doesn't go good this year, you
are starving to death.
You will die.
Yeah.
Or you will live.
Yeah.
So the weather was way more important to people. And
the
so
seasons and celebrating and reverencing.
And if you could predict those, then you became very powerful.
Yeah.
And so astronomy, astrology, understanding the where we were in our year cycle, our general weather cycle.
Yep.
That sort of thing was a lot more important to people than it is today. And like you mentioned earlier, that Jordan Peterson and stuff, the kind of the archetypes.
Yeah.
There's like a Jungian, Carl Jung.
Oh, I love
huge on psychology. He also spoke about like the pre-Christian gods. A lot of them were archetypes. Like you said, Ares is this. Athena is more wisdom, but also war. And so that you kind of have like your mode, or I think you said the ego state. You have whatever ego state you're trying to gain in, you're trying to benefit in. You have some type of archetype that you can look to for favor. That if you do this thing, you will then get favor from it in your here and now. That's very powerful to people when like you're gonna get a reward. Yes. You're actually going to get a reward like right now.
Right now. You don't have to wait until you die and hope that you did it right, or otherwise you're damned.
Right. That's actually, if you're trying to sell someone something, that's like a more logical thing. I'm at least telling you you're going to get a reward like soon.
Yeah.
That you can apply to something you're trying to do in life.
Yeah.
So
for sure,
on some level, that's a lot more, obviously it's still like, I'm not trying to say believing that is like super logical or scientific in a certain sense, but there is a logic to it.
Yeah.
It's at least more logical for me to believe in that than you're promising I get something after I die. Like,
right.
Where's the return?
Right.
So when something goes good, you can be like, oh, clearly the gods favored us. See?
Right.
And then if something goes bad, be like, the hell with the gods, and you're not gonna burn, you're not gonna be tortured forever. Or you can,
or blame the guy in your group that didn't quite do it right, and then it was actually their fault.
You didn't read those organs right, priests. You're gonna get a new priest, off with your head. We need a new priest because this last one was clearly bad. He angered the gods.
But to your point, if they get it right, think about the power that you have to be able to interpret.
Exactly. We did this ritual. Things went well.
It's because
I'm the priest.
Yeah.
Listen to what I have to say.
Yeah. That's all a very good point. So then, how does that? Then how do you? Is there a God? What is the point of being here?
My personal opinion?
What does all that look like? What is your?
That's a really interesting question because life exists.
Yeah.
As a fact, we're here, we're talking, we're thinking.
Yeah. Unless this is all the Matrix, and we're just
Yeah. As far as I can tell, life is a thing, and you and I are two individual humans, and
we have to accept that
right now
as a pretty foundational fact. Otherwise, we'd be.
I'm not sure
somewhere.
I'm not sure there's a purpose above ourselves. Okay. I'm not sure. There might be. There might be. I think there could be.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily convinced that there is. And you can take that like anything in life. You can view it. You can turn into a hedonistic nihilist because of that.
Totally.
Or you could be like, if I was really rich, I'd be like Elon Musk. I'd be building rock. I'd be doing things that I think are cool and influencing society in ways that I think are good.
Yes.
I would be building rockets. I would be making my dream manifest.
Yes.
Or a historical example like Alexander the Great.
Oh, he's such a good example.
Such a badass. Because again, we're ancient Greeks. We were just doing a thing on reading Alexander the Great. And he was deified in his lifetime.
Yes.
And
when you have the amount of success that he did.
Right. If when you look at Alexander the Great's life, how can you tell me he's not a god? With all the things he accomplished in such a short period of time?
It's a great question.
Macedon was a relatively small, it was the backwater. The real Greeks didn't even consider them Greeks.
No.
The southern Greeks were like, they speak Greek.
No, do we want to claim them?
Those plain barbarians.
Yeah.
Those, they ride horses and stuff.
Right.
Our
backwoods cousins.
Right, basically. And so historically they had not dominated the southern Greeks.
Right.
And all of a sudden Philip Macedon reformed the army. Alexander inherited that.
He did inherit a pretty good setup.
And a really smart mother.
Brilliant mother.
Because like the female nobles of the day, they didn't wield like authoritative power, but they had an enormous secondary influence.
Yes.
And so a lot of people think, I mean, Philip could have been assassinated for any number of reasons. He was a king in the classical era.
Yes.
He had plenty of people who wanted to take his spot from him.
Right.
But a lot of people in particular think that his wife, Roxana, oh no, sorry, that was Alexander's wife. Alexander's mother, because Philip also had another wife, because he was bad as king, you know, multiple wives, whatever.
Why not?
You know, you're the king.
Yeah.
He had multiple wives, and
taking 2 girls to the dance. Who's
exactly,
telling you no?
Exactly. Why not?
Yeah.
But anyways, Trump, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So there were a lot of in those historical aristocracies, there was a lot of backroom backstabbing and scheming and power plays. A lot of the women, they had an interest in their children inheriting the throne.
Of course.
And Philip had other heirs that were older than Alexander, had potentially a better claim.
Yep.
And so the women would organize and play court politics with the other like powerful men who did wield authoritative power to make sure that her and her line of succession are the ones who have the wealth and power, not these other hoes, not not the other female lines, right?
Yeah.
So that was their thing, and they needed to be intelligent, and they needed to be smart and ruthless and brutal and
sneaky,
and so they were capable people. They weren't just locked in a
locked
in a tower. And I mean, some of them were. If you were just going to marry, if you had a bunch of daughters, you're just going to marry one off to a noble. But
right. Well, and she was respected as like she was like not a soothsayer, but something on like that spiritual side where she kind of like helped manipulate things too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Prophecies.
So he had a really smart mom who was basically helping him be as successful as he could be as a young king.
Yep.
And that's really powerful when your mother is able to, on the back end side of things, not the front side, but on like the back.
Well, and that was the thing. He got it on both, from his dad front end, mom backside.
Dad had front of house lockdown. Army was a new revolutionary army for the time.
Yep.
Mom had back of house secure. All the nobles were aligned. The other potential heirs were killed off, or Philip was killed off, so they didn't. So she was able to secure loyalty.
Yep.
Blah blah blah. Her son became king, not the other son. So he had both sides. His house was secure, so then he could go out and conquer.
Yeah, and then he wasn't some screw up. Right. He had, ultimately it comes down to, was he capable? And hell, yes.
What makes me so inspired by Alexander the Great, and if I want to say there is a God, I mean his accomplishments. I'm just trying to buy a house right now, man. I'm 32. Like this guy at my age.
You aren't trying to conquer the known world. You're
maybe
just
if I had an army and a state, I probably would.
Why not?
But
I mean,
yes. If I had an army and a state, I probably would. You know? But I don't. I'm just trying to buy a house right now.
Yeah.
He was my age, and he conquered
steps.
the Persian Empire. Yeah, he conquered the Persian Empire. He started small Macedon, conquered the venerable Greeks.
Yes.
The venerable Greeks conquered the Persian Empire with far fewer men. He was a brilliant strategist. He was super intelligent, but not only that, he was badass warrior.
He was a badass warrior.
He
got in there.
He got in the thick of fighting personally. Did the warrior thing, killed other men on the battlefield, proved his physical prowess.
Which is only going to amplify your men's belief in you.
Your men will follow you to the ends of the earth.
Yes, they will.
Until you hit the Indus River, and then they're like,
well, you know, I mean,
that was the end of Earth as far as they were concerned. Like, let's go home.
Yeah, we're good.
Essentially. And so, by 32, you conquer all of the civilized. I don't like when people say the known world. They knew about other parts of the world.
Yeah, but the civilized.
The civilized world, they conquered that.
Yeah.
But I guess they didn't know that much about China. But China's doing the thing on the other side of the planet.
Would that have been the mysterious steps of craziness? Yeah.
Yeah. But and so the difference in ability and accomplishment between me 32 versus him 32, man, I mean, shoot, you probably have to be a god to do all that.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to
who am I to say he's not?
Well, can we throw you back in time and replace Alexander? What would that look like if you guys swapped? If you are the day that Philip dies and you are now there instead of Alexander, versus Alexander is here today married to Hannah.
I also believe on Alexander, just talking about how he had the perfect setup. He had the perfect setup for life. He was a king. He was a king at a young age, and his mom secured back a house. His dad secured front. He had best army in the world at the time.
Yeah.
He also, I think it was Aristotle, was literally
his
his personal tutor growing up. You have this venerable
somebody that we
again,
still look to today.
Again, all you could almost see him as like a wise god in a sense. Like he's so important in philosophy and Western thoughts and everything that flows, everything that comes after in civilization, that, you know, and he was your personal tutor. Aristotle was your guy.
Yeah.
Teaching you math and everything and how to think. He was teaching you how to think.
Yeah.
And so he had the best setup.
Yes.
So
could you imagine if he had lived another?
I mean, I don't know if I'd conquer the Persian Empire, but I'd probably, from his wife's or his mother's desire, implanting in him from a young age that you're born to be a king, you're born to be a conqueror, you're born, you know. So she like indoctrinated him. She gave him the personal confidence of you know, because that's her son. She cultivated him as her mother, as his mother. So she so much of his personality again has to by default come from her, and we know that it did. She wasn't a locked away princess in a tower. She was very involved in that whole process. And again, she was a very capable woman. So she imparted, she tried to impart the best qualities that she had onto him. And Philip, his dad, Alexander's dad, was around long enough for Alexander to learn, you know, as much as he could from his dad. By the time you're late teen, I mean, you know, your dad's not that smart anymore.
No,
but,
we're always smarter than our fathers at that point. Well, and that
I probably would have gone to war and tried to conquer the Greeks at the least.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say if I would have been successful? Because even his conquest of the Greeks was the battle over Thebes that was a battle that Alexander had to personally risk his life to get involved with.
Yes.
When
it wasn't going.
When the top guy has to get into the thick of it, that's not a secure battle.
No.
That's a close battle.
Yeah.
That's one you don't want to have, actually.
Yeah. But
so
it worked out.
Yeah. And that was the only city-state to rebel. There could have been others.
Yeah.
They're very easily, if the politics had gone slightly one other way and there was a second city, if Athens or Sparta had also rebelled with Thebes, maybe he never would have got out of the Greek peninsula.
Yeah, maybe it's a different story. Well, and how important, I mean, that just exemplifies the importance of what you are brainwashed, propagandized, told in your youth. Because if you're being told you are a king and you are a god and you are born for these, you are born to rule. How is that any different than you are born to be a good Catholic?
You have original sin. You're bad.
Right.
You're
and
bad.
What would have happened if, you know, at whatever age, just before he takes over for his assassinated father, it's, oh yeah, by the way, we were just doing that so that you were going to have a good upbringing.
Right.
It's not actually true.
It's not true. And we actually don't respect it.
Right. But gosh, just all of it's amazing how we integrate everything that goes on around us in our lives. And that's what dictates how we fucking see the world. And what is that going to mean for yours and Hannah's first baby? What are the teachings? What are the things that you instill in that child?
So one thing that we have already, because we're not pregnant or trying yet.
Yeah.
We would have one, if our financial situation was different, we would have had kids already.
Yeah.
We're making the decisions we're making. People can argue, you know, in one way or the other, just have them, wait for this one thing.
That's my camp, by the way.
Or whatever.
I'm always just dive in. I'd have 10 more, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why not?
Well, why? I didn't bring the second girl to the dance.
Oh, okay.
Rachel's done.
So I factor there. Okay.
I got to go find a.
Remember, women are the limiting factor to breeding, right?
There it is.
There you go.
Evidenced.
So this is so funny. I hope she doesn't take this the wrong way, right?
she knows.
Humans are emotional beings, and you know, you love your wife.
Yeah.
But
very much. Yes.
Good. That's how it should be.
Thank you for that clarifying point.
Yeah. Sorry, what were we talking about?
Your first child. How you're going to bring them up. What you're going to instill.
Back to the pre-Christian things. They had philosophy and politics to think they understood that they are capable of themselves asking the questions how to live and how they should behave with others. And I have adopted that mindset, and I want to instill that onto my child
Yeah.
that you are smart enough, like Alexander, you are born, you are smart enough to make these decisions for yourself. It is my job as your dad to guide you. Yeah, I have a self-interest and a non-self-interest to
Yeah.
see you be the best person you can be. I want you to be the best person you can be for selfish interest and for benefit, charitable reasons as well.
Yeah.
You will bear my name. You will be my genetic lineage. I want you to be the best person you can be. But I also want you to be happy and to love me, because one day I'm going to get old and I might need you.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to just be a hard ass.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do things. I'm not going to, at least now I don't have to deal with kids being bad kids yet.
Right.
But at least in my strategy, I'm not going to try my best. Again, I'm also an emotional being. I'm not going to try to be punitive with you or have no purpose in punishment.
Right.
I'm going to get old and weak and frail one day and I might need you. So
that's my take on AI. When I interact with ChatGPT or something, I'm still at that stage where I'm like, hey, could you please do this? Thanks. Because I'm afraid when it does take over the world, it's going to remember. And it's
who was naughty and who was nice.
Yeah. Were you yelling at? And I actually, the last couple of days, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Chat? I just asked you something simple. Why can't you do it right? I'm like, oh, this is costing me my future. It's gonna kick me out of the house and make me live in a nursing home. This is great.
So we have a lot of books of mythology books.
Yeah.
That have a bunch of the ancient Greek, Roman, and some of that we do have some of the Nordic stories in them.
Yeah.
Great big books. These are our people's stories.
Yeah.
These are people that our smorgasbord of genes descend from.
Yes.
On some capacity.
Yep.
This is your cultural lineage.
Yep.
These are the stories of your people.
Yeah.
There are lessons. These are stories, and they are entertaining. A lot of them.
That's what helps them stick around.
Yeah. Helps you remember. It helps you tell the story.
Yeah.
But they also take heed of what they're trying to teach. I want to consciously impart on my children to try to learn from these stories. They are not just being told, and that's also something that I remember very rarely getting told to do, or the why. I remember being told a handful of Aesop's fables, but mostly Bible stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't taking them seriously, my grandma or whoever, or the CCD teacher would be like, oh, they'd say something like passive aggressively, like, oh, sometimes there's something good in there, rather than like sitting me down and be like, Lucas, you need to listen to these stories because there is a positive message that will help you in life.
Yes.
Again, engineer, son of an engineer. I was too literal if I was like, why do I care about this story or whatever?
Right.
And so that's something that I want to be able to do. And I think I'll only have to say that once. I won't have to, but imparting with them the conscious learning.
Yes.
And be like, you are my son. You are the son of me and my wife. We're smart, intelligent people. You are smart and intelligent. I want you to think about these things, even from as young as they can be.
Yep.
We are an example of people who have the level of success that we have. You can follow the positive examples that we provide. And hey, son, I'm not too proud. Here are some things I did that hurt me in life.
Yep.
I would like you to avoid them.
Yeah.
Because then you can be better. You can step over that mistake that I made, this pitfall I fell in.
Don't touch the stove. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I already did for you.
You can just step over that.
Yeah.
And I want to consciously impart that on my children, because I think for a lot of people, I think for myself and perhaps probably you, it takes a long time and maturity to realize the purpose behind these things that the things that were taught and the things that were instilled, the why, and also the method, because the process is important too.
Yes.
If you can get someone to act a certain way, that's great.
Yep.
But if they don't have the capability to understand the how and the why, as soon as you're removed from that situation, as soon as they leave your house and try to live on their own, then they're going to fail. They need
100%.
to have the how and the why behind those things as well.
Yes.
And so we have a lot of mythology, and so I want my kids to read European mythology and philosophy.
Yes.
I want them to know the stories of the myriad disparate people we descend from.
Yep.
And to learn the process, because a big part of philosophy is how you think. It's not necessarily the conclusions you come to.
Right.
That's important.
Yeah.
Don't
but
get me
the
wrong.
exercise
Yes.
itself of thinking.
Critically think.
Yes.
I want to impart that on my kids consciously and say, I want you to read this because this is what I want you to take away from it.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
I want you to help me with this yard work because the logic, it needs to get done. You're an able-bodied person. I want you to contribute to the work that the family needs to do.
Yeah.
But I also want you to appreciate physical labor.
Yes.
And I want you to understand how it can make you feel uncomfortable. So I want you to understand the value in positioning yourself in society so you can make lots of money so you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Because if you have to do this, I can point to broken down 40-year-olds who have their body destroyed and are in tons of pain and don't make lots of money and therefore don't get to have this, because money's also freedom. Money's power and freedom.
Yes.
And so I don't have a college degree yet.
Right.
I was a boneheaded young person. I got those C's and D's because I got the same piece of paper. So it hasn't, those bad grades still have not negatively affected my life. just for the record.
Right.
But if I had gone a different route, if I had already gotten an education, I wouldn't be working the job I'm working. I could have done things to put myself in a better financial situation.
Yeah.
And if I can, but and again, there's plenty of people who make lots of money, successful, sales, military, you don't necessarily have to go to college, but again, having the and with my grandfather being a mechanic, I kind of had mixed messages. He didn't even finish elementary school.
Oh yeah.
So I had this, and he was a great man and very smart, by the way. He asked questions and sought understanding.
Yes.
So I had this college educated engineer dad who was also gone a lot of the time. So a lot of who was raising me was actually my grandfather.
Yeah.
And so in my household, there was never any kind of like elitist or classist looking down on, because my grandparents helped my dad a lot financially. They gave him land, they paid for his college, they let him live in their finished basement apartment after he was married and had their first kid, and he was 30. I was 2 months before being born, before he moved into his first house. How much money do you save not paying rent?
A lot.
So you're 30.
So much.
And your parents pay for your college and they give you half an acre of land to put your house on.
Pretty good.
So they helped him a lot. So there was no elitist, like none of that.
We're above.
Yeah. Like, but a tiny bit of being like, hey, do you want to incur the physical wear and tear on your body? They would say things like work with your mind, not your body. But I didn't. Again, if I don't have, like, that's a message.
Yes.
That's a message.
Yeah.
And I understand that as a message. But if I don't have the understanding of like the why and the how, if I don't understand why you're telling me that message, and if I don't feel, because again, sales, right? People, when they feel, if I don't feel, I felt like growing up, a lot of the chores and stuff I did was just punitive. And it was. Some of it.
Right.
Some of it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're being a shithead. Go
What's the actual point of
but
this?
not. But I think that if I'm able to, if I can extract labor from my children to do basic household chores and also teach them a lesson that will help them in
Why
life,
wouldn't you do it?
that's a win-win.
That's a win-win.
That's a win-win for dad.
Yeah, for sure.
And then hopefully my son won't be so boneheaded and have to learn things for himself as much as I did.
Yeah.
Because rather than don't argue with me, my rule is law, I'm smart, son, you're smart, think for yourself. Here are positive examples. And like if you're, obviously I don't have kids yet, but at some point and I'm sure there will be a time where they're just, I don't know, being a butthead or whatever.
Yeah.
Being disobedient, just like for no good reason. And for no good reason whatsoever. Just to like
chaos of
dad's my on one level, I've heard people talk about like the tyranny of parenthood, because you like own them on some level and are in charge of them and direct their lives, and so like kids can kind of see you that way, on some level. And I remember very much seeing my parents that way, but they also got called psychotic by other adults in front of me, and so that takes a lot in America for you to say that to someone in front of their kids, like in their house, not even family. So, anyways,
that's
strict household. Like, obviously there's a time and a place where there might need to be a correction, but I think those will be minimized by consciously teaching that way rather than just obey me because I'm your dad and you're a good Catholic and you follow God and the state and your parents because this is the hierarchy and this is the hierarchy.
Yeah. I have very conscientiously approached parenthood that way, where I want them. There's certain things, you think about like really rich families and their kids never do any physical labor and they just have things handed to them. And then there's a reason why those families end up failing. It's because those kids never learned the why. They never learned the critical pieces of everything.
Why and how. How did your family get rich 2 or 3 generations ago?
Yes.
What good decisions or hard work ethic did your ancestors leverage and use to their benefit?
Yeah. And so I recognize my kids are going to end up making some boneheaded decisions. I mean, that is inevitable. That is humankind.
Right.
Welcome.
Right.
But as much of it as I can talk them through the process, this is why we do this is how we do it. All of those things. My oldest is 13, and my favorite thing is he'll call us out when he knows he's having to do something that for no other reason than he's just being told to.
Yeah.
And it's both frustrating and like, oh, good, it's working. This whole process is working. Now go do the goddamn dishes, right? Like but I don't care.
I had to go to work today.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Get the dishes done.
Yeah.
Son, daughter,
Yeah.
Do this chore for me because I went out and earned money today for the family.
Yeah.
And you did not.
Yeah. You like having a roof over your head? Go do it. Yeah. That's not my finest parenting moments,
sure,
but
at least it's honest,
But it is
honest, man. And that earns respect. Like we're talking about Trump. You might not like something he did, but when he's just honest, even if you think he's being a big jerk.
Yeah.
Or some like God, goodness, the amount of amount of buy-in people get when you're just honest, even if sometimes you have to be a little rough or on the edges, like a little bit of yes, recognize this is my self-interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is in my self-interest. Just do it. You know what? That level of honesty, be like, okay, Dad, you know what, Dad, you had a hard day at work. Like, yeah, I'll do these dishes for you.
Yeah.
Rather than just trying to like lie, lie all the time, just being fake. Yeah. That made me so with the religion thing again, that was deeply, and I think that's bad. Because they still to this day have not recognized that was a bad thing, or that at least they understand why someone might be upset by experiencing that.
Right.
On the on the receiving, they won't even admit to that level of guilt, you could say.
Yeah.
Like I don't need some big apology. Like, oh my God, son,
but
you were psychologically abused. I'm so sorry. I don't know. I just be like, I understand why that might have made you not feel great about it. If they can at least say that, they don't even need to say, right. They don't even need to say, I'm sorry, I hurt you. They just need to be like, I get it.
Yeah.
Because like on the flip side, for people who don't have my whole life experience and understand all the context around this, I and many other people are raised in a religion and then they leave, or they think they're doing it for positive social reasons. They think the structures are good for their kids, and then they have a falling out with their faith or whatever later in life. That's not what happened. It was. And then the way that was expressed was in the rudest, most disrespectful way possible. Yeah. And so, and then still on the back end of it, there's zero accountability. Yeah. But then you teach me, always take accountability for your actions, blah, 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 accountability. But then there's none on your end. It's like, well, you're a hypocrite. Right. You lie, and you're a hypocrite. I don't respect you. I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. Yep. Even if I recognize in the moment and looking back that some of the things you were saying were right, which they were. I'm going to be I'm going to be greatly predisposed to not listen to what you have to say and to inherently rebel because I'm a smart thinking individual and I have internalized, Dad, you're not taking accountability. Right. Screw you. Yeah. What's up with that? And so that when there's a hypocrisy, that's going to inherently, when you have to be in charge of someone, when you have to be a leader for someone, and I think most fathers wind up inevitably, for good or ill, on some level, and both parents, of course, wind up being on some level a leader for their family. Yeah. Someone's always in charge. Yes. So, and if you're humans, biology, it's either the husband or the wife. And you might have more leadership in one role, in one aspect, and less leadership in a different aspect. But humans are hierarchical, and we're not equal. And so someone's always better than someone's always in charge. And it is so much harder to lead or think that you're the leader when you're trying to hide in the shadows, not being honest, not standing up, taking accountability, and taking charge. Yeah. And so that's the biggest thing. My parents aren't evil, but they've done human things. They're humans. And the thing that has caused me and them to have a bad relationship now and recently is that, and historically growing up, is that there's almost zero accountability from their side, and just enormous amounts of hypocrisy.
Well, yeah, it's hard to respect that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Despite
now,
probably wanting to, like,
there
me
actually is a
reason
desire
to respect
right.
it.
And the reason it hurts me is because I am an emotional person, and they did do good things. They did provide, again, middle class. They provided
and you love
physically, I do love them on a deep level, and that's why it hurts me. But I'm also 32. I'm a man.
Yes.
I have a wife. I'm gonna have kids soon. The very least, I have to stand up for myself.
Yes.
And even if it's to my parents, like, those are the people I should be able to be the most nakedly honest with, because they changed my diapers. They raised me.
Right.
They spanked me. They saw me when I was crying and over something stupid.
Yeah.
And
they
saw me grow
of their labor. So like,
I have to, in order for me to respect myself, I can't let people be so emotionally disrespectful. And I understand people are socialized different, and I understand. I have a high level of understanding that my dad is an engineer, so he's gonna stuff's just gonna come off, and he's not gonna mean it, because I do that too. I have his habits as well, to a large degree, and certain things, everyone's a little different, but to a large degree, the worst habits of like being a poorly socialized engineer are greatly mitigated. My dad is to the extreme. He is the actual engineer. I'm not the math guy. I'm not. But a lot of like the way he thinks is very much in part of me. But yeah, I used to be really bad about just saying really offensive stuff, and like genuinely be like, oh my God, like this person's offended now, like holy crap, I'm so sorry. And then as soon as I say it, like, wow, that was like really dumb thing to say. Like, okay, there's a thought in there somewhere, but like, why did you say it that way? Like, holy crap, I can't believe I said that. and I just so he's that to a T, like times 100, and then but just like zero accountability. And I think humans are emotional beings, and if you want to interact better with people, you need to have some level of understanding of that and act according to that. You can't just be pure logic brain, because humans aren't pure logic.
No. Yeah, that does not work. There is definitely a social dynamic that you have to figure out. How are you socially not engineered, socially conditioned, and how do I interact with that conditioning? Because ultimately that's what we're interacting with, is somebody else's social conditioning.
And what it comes down to, if you make zero effort to understand that person or interact with them in a way that you can interact with them on, if you make zero effort to overcome those differences, then you just don't care.
Yeah, then you don't care.
You just don't care. And so I'm not going to care.
Yeah.
Still hurts me.
Yeah. It's a really good point. Well, we're almost at 3 hours and 40 minutes. This has been.
Hannah's waiting to go on brunch.
Oh shoot. Okay. Well, we gotta wrap this up.
We can have another podcast.
Yeah, we can do another one. In parting, one, thank you. This has been fantastic. We covered a lot of ground, a lot of really good thoughts. Is there anything in parting that you want to leave behind?
Ask questions and seek understanding.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. Amen.
Amen.
Couldn't agree more. All right, Lucas, thank you.
Thank you.